Sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Get ready for the Combine.
Tamper Fest.
We'll talk about it. We'll make that decision when we need to. Right now, we're just one step at a time.
We're number 72, Michael Clements. Michael Clements, bitch boy. I hate them.
Daquan Jones has to be on this roster next year.
Leonard Floyd, that's my first guy, and my second guy is A.J. Epinesa.
With the 28th pick,
there's going to be a quality player available at wide receiver for them at 28.
Mike Danger.
Do you trust Sean McDermott?
You have to, I suppose.
Do you, though? Do you trust Brandon Beane? Do you trust Terry Pagula? I don't 100% trust what's going on with that organization.
Gene Battaglia.
You're not going to see me flying high. I'm just telling you, Mike. I'm a new man. I'm a new fan.
As Buffalo tries again to beat the Florida Panthers tonight.
the Florida Panthers!
The absolute worst call of the season. No call. And enough's enough.
The refs have already admitted their mistake on the no call last night.
Shohei Ohtani, he has his debut today for the Dodgers.
It's showtime!
Honestly, sign me up for 50 bombs.
Whoa, 50?
Yep.
95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Hey there! Good afternoon to you and welcome on into the Sports Bar. Rochester's only local sports talk show, Danger and Battaglia. Glad you've made us part of your day. At 95.7 FM and AM 950 here locally, The Fan Rochester sounds its best in the free-to-download Odyssey app. And you can also watch along as we've got our stream up at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and on Twitch. I'm Mike Danger. That's Gene Battaglia.
Oh, my gosh. We should be doing the show outside today. What are we doing? It's February.
70 degrees. 70 degrees in February. Come on. I want to believe that this today, I think it got up to as high as 72 at the airport, which tied, I'm not counting Hetzko, but I believe that tied our record, which was set back in 1997. Not 1990, 77.
See, Count Haskell only comes out when there's fear. There's no fear today. This is wonderful. This is splendid.
No,
We're talking about cold temperatures or high winds or, dare I say, inches of snow.
Somebody could invoke a little fear into Count Hetzko if we're talking about this being a global warming problem, maybe? Is this how many more years do we have left on this planet if it keeps going the way it's going? 10, 20, 30 years! I don't know. I'm not complaining. None of us should.
Count Haskell is going to make an appearance coming up in March. And also making an appearance in March will probably be some cease and desist from Channel 13. Like, knock it off.
I still don't know how he got there. And, we'll idea. I know I'm going to run into Scott at some point. Scott's a Vikings fan, and I like Scott. He's a treasure. He's great. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. He's one of the best. And I know at some point it's going to get to him. At some point we're going to have to explain ourselves. Like, I don't know where Count Hetzko came from. It just kind of happened organically on the show where we were talking about how much snow we were going to get and the fear that comes with 2, 3, 4 inches of snow. But he doesn't sound or look anything like the Count.
No, it's
just threw his name on it. We welcome you into the Sports Bar. We've got a lot to recap here over the last 24 hours as the NFL Scouting Combine continues from Indianapolis. Late yesterday afternoon, we heard from Bills head coach Sean McDermott. Today, we heard from Bills GM Brandon Beane. We'll get into some of what we learned and what they were talking about here in just a few. First, let's set the table here and let you know who's stopping by the Sports Bar. That'll include Rochester Americans head coach Seth Appert, who makes his weekly visit to us here at 425 this afternoon.
So this Amherst went 3-2-1-1, which doesn't sound bad. You can spin this like they got points in 5 of 7 games. However, like when we began this journey, they were in 3rd. Now, technically, they're in 5th, but they're tied for 4th in points. But Toronto has a game in hand on the Amerks. So where are we at here with the Amerks here is, you get a little bit of a break. Oh, not really. Tomorrow night begins 3 games in 4 nights this stretch here, including 2 up in Belleville, a team you just played twice. So, and I haven't seen yet. I know the Amerks did recall somebody from Jacksonville that being Giroux. But I don't know if the Amerks actually lost anybody to Florida, as we haven't heard anything yet from the Sabres in terms of the morning skate. Don Granado not talking until the 5 o'clock hour today. So maybe we'll hear that somebody got called up. Seth Appert, head coach of the Rochester Americans, always gracious with his time. The team home tomorrow night against Syracuse.
And with Bills brass in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine, our guy Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard is going to be our ears and eyes in Indy this afternoon.
Yeah, so it's great to always have this this relationship with Matt, the Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post-Standard, as he is out there. And it's not just what you hear at the podium. I mean, Matt is really one of the best at this, where he's talking to people off the record. He's, kind of making the rounds there. Matt is a real go-to guy, so we'll kind of figure out, because some of the news started last night. Connor McGovern, I didn't have him being on my board for being the first to restructure, but he did, and to me that makes sense. You want to build around him. He wants to be here. All right, it might kind of hurt a little bit here in 2 or 3 years, but for now, a little bit of relief for the Buffalo Bills against the Cap, but they got a long way to go.
I tell you, the McGovern deal, if we want to start there, and by the way, you can join us anytime this afternoon. Our lines are open for you at 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326. I love that they started their restructuring talks with Connor McGovern. I think it shows that the Bills recognize the strongest part of their team last year was, in fact, the offensive line. They were the most consistent. He'll be the first to say that was the best offensive line performance that they've gotten since he and Sean McDermott have been in Buffalo. And one of the pieces that you brought in as a free agent last year is a big part of that, and that's Connor McGovern, who had his deal guaranteed for 2024, clearing up just under $4 million in cap space, $3.74 million in cap space cleared with that restructure for Connor McGovern late yesterday.
Yeah, so void years at the end. Don't ask me to explain it. All I know is that as long as the cap goes up year by year, you can do these sort of things. Brandon Beane speaking earlier today, and talking like, hey, we were planning for a cap in the 240s. It went to 250. It went above 250. So should give the Bills a little bit of room.
This is Brandon Beane earlier today discussing the salary cap.
Every dollar you can get helps you. It's we're working now through guys to restructure. You saw we did that with Connor McGovern yesterday, and had conversations going in the last few weeks with different players, representatives, just various things, whether it's extensions, whether it's modifying their contract, whether it's, in this case, restructuring, which is really just moving money down. So we're working through all that, but it does help. It's less that we have to take off, because we were, hoping it would get to 250, but didn't really expect it to. We were conservatively planning for a number in the 40s. So to get to 255, I was smiling.
There's another thing, too, and we'll be playing Brandon Beane comments throughout the afternoon here in the sports bar. Listening to him talk today, and it's one of those stories that I have kind of gone from one end to the other end here. Now, I don't want to say 180, but at November, December thing, and Tre'Davious White has played his last down with the Buffalo Bills. When we talked to Matt Perino, I want to get his opinion here, because hearing Brandon Beane say really nice things about Tre'Davious White, okay, like, What is the other than he's been a good part, but if you want to keep him on this team, it's hard for me to imagine them doing that at the numbers. So could they actually be? Is that one of the restructures they're talking to when maybe Tre'Davious White does the team a solid, knowing that, hey, if the Bills actually release me, I'm not getting half this, more than likely, on the open market.
So Brandon Beane did speak at length about Trey White, his recovery process. Matt Milano, his recovery process. This is Brandon Beane earlier today on the recovery of both White and Milano.
Trey, we've talked about it. We'll start with him. It's just what he's meant to this organization and everything he's done. And to have the injury in 21, we all saw him work so hard to come back. Probably wasn't looking like the Trey White that he wanted to be at the end of the 22 season, but really we're starting to see him come into form. I'm not going to say he was all the way back or not. You'd have to ask him, but you were definitely seeing a guy who was trending up, and then all of a sudden this Achilles on the other side pops, and it's just like, man, can the guy get a break? And it's just, you feel for him. But once again, he has attacked this thing. He's in there all the time. I've had breakfast with him a couple of times here since the season's ended, because these guys it's lonely. You got a locker room full of 75, 80 players, and all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 guys, rehabbing down there. But he has worked super hard. He's been a main staple here since Sean and I got here, and he's continuous rehab. I don't have like a definitive timeline of yet when he'd be back, but he's doing well, working hard, everything you would expect from Trey White.
And then what about Matt Milano as well?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for the reminder. So Matt, same thing. He had a recent visit with one of the docs that did his surgery, and so all is going well. It's a little bit of a different injury than an ACL or an Achilles or things that happen to a lot of football players. So we're still working with him. He's working his way back, very positive. Anticipating his things to continue to ramp up. I don't know what yet he would look like in OTAs if we would even have clearance for him to fully participate. I think it's one of those things you'll see him on the side or doing stuff, and maybe there's a chance. But we're optimistic that Matt will be ready to go at the right time when the pads come on.
Okay, so like training camp, it's probably trending good for that, you think?
As we sit here today, I would say so. Okay. But we still got a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to sit here and say it's day one of training camp either. I think it's he is working hard. He's doing well. The updates so far have been positive.
Right.
And Matt, like he's a super optimistic guy. Just sleeps, eats ball all the time. It's all you almost have to force him to go enjoy himself a little bit.
Sure sounds to me like they're not going to move on from Trey White.
No. Or this is part of the negotiation that you're such a big part of this team and everything else that you wouldn't be telegraphing that, hey, we're asking Trey White to take a pay cut.
Right. It's funny. We are in the season of lying, and the lying can be subtle. It can be telegraphed. It can be kind of laid out. And one of the things I thought was of note was, I can't remember if it was yesterday on One Bills Live, but it was brought up again today during his time with the media, Brandon Beane and Kaiir Elam. And essentially Kaiir Elam getting a fresh start, which was something that I think Tasker said on One Bills Live earlier this week, almost as if to say, hey, Kaiir is going to be an offseason storyline. And there's going to be a lot of people that want to say Kaiir Elam is a bust because Kaiir Elam didn't play a ton last year and couldn't get on the field for many of the games last year. We have to change that mindset, that narrative. He's going to get a fresh start. He's going to come to camp as prepared as he's ever been. And, oh, by the way, he's going to have a new position coach there to make sure they get the most out of Kaiir Elam moving forward. So where Tasker kind of telegraphed during One Bills Live that he expected Kaiir Elam to be out there week one, tells you that they, okay, if it's Elam out there week one, where is Trey White? Where are these? I mean, they are kind of like laying the foundation in their words, and then the actions are yet to come. But with Trey White, what is that action? Is it a restructure? Is it taking away any guarantees and redoing a deal, a new deal? Like what does that all look like? Brandon Beane kind of laying the foundation for that here with his words at the Combine.
Yeah, and that injury too, because I always thought that Trey White would take the career arc of, boy, like when Jordan Poyer moves on, he'd be a pretty good free safety knowing he's got the smarts and everything, but maybe not as much physical ability here in his later years. And, for a corner here, he's getting up there. We forget that was Sean McDermott's first draft choice for the Buffalo Bills. McDermott now, through 8 years here. So it's been a while.
And we always talk about the life cycle of a corner, right? The life cycle of a corner is usually you come into the league with supreme athleticism. You are younger, faster, more athletic than the guys that you're covering, but your technique might suffer. See Kaiir Elam. Not great with his technique, but pretty athletic guy. Then, as you get your technique down, you hit the peak. You're athletic, you can hang with anybody, and you've got great technique. And that's what we saw of Trey White during his peak years when he was about to get paid that big contract. And then like a lot of players, you start to lose your athleticism, but you have great technique. And I would say Trey White probably has great technique, but is not going to come back from this injury with the same kind of athleticism.
Well, and again, if I can kind of take a detour with this, because the one team, it used to be New England. Story out of Kansas City today. Anything they do, we're going to be paying attention to on this show in particular. I'm not a fan of teams that use the franchise tag. I think it's a hostile move. However, is this the exception what the Chiefs are kind of toying with, that L'Jarius Sneed could get the franchise tag, and it could be a scenario where they don't offer those long-term dollars? Because, look, a contract for a corner, big dollars, that's fine year 1 and 2, but like what you're saying there, years 3 and 4, could the Chiefs be trying to find a middle ground here?
Yeah, well, look, the application of the franchise tag may just be something that they can use to extend their ability to talk to the player as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that they'll play on the franchise tag. I think when you have a player that plays an entire season on the franchise tag, that's when feelings get hurt. That's when you kind of know, okay, I'm not coming back to this situation. And you'll hear a lot of GMs, especially with the cap number being what it is, saying, well, now we've got options. Saquon Barkley, we could have him come back to the Giants. Like, I don't think Saquon Barkley's coming back. They're not going to tag him a second time. You got to be better than that if you're Joe Schoen. I think it's a hard thing to say. Like Kansas City didn't have Chris Jones week 1. Remember, Chris Jones was kind of watching because he was so late to sign.
Right.
And they'll do it on their timetable. And
like it cost the Chiefs in the end.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly right. So we got a little bit of color there from Brandon Beane on the injury and the recovery of Trey White, and also Matt Milano. Free agency and expectations in free agency. Let's start with a couple of outgoing free agents that some people might believe, hey, you can still make a play for this guy. One being Daquan Jones. Brandon Beane earlier on Daquan Jones.
You're also filling out the market. What are the options at that position? In Daquan's case, D tackle. Like, what are your other viable options? Should he go elsewhere? And it is a game. That is one of the things. If you take it into free agency, we have to also assume that you're going to leave. So once that negotiating window opens 2 days prior, it's kind of we're all kind of in this.
It's open season.
It's open season, and if we don't have a deal in place or something that seems imminent, then we also have to have conversations with other players at that position.
You got to do right by the organization at the end.
We got to protect the Bills first and foremost. We want the best for all our guys. Who wouldn't want Gabe Davis, Daquan Jones, run down the gamut? I mean, we love our guys. There's very few times I'm done with that guy. I wouldn't want to see him back in a Bills uniform.
All right, there's Brandon Beane on One Bills Live earlier. And along those lines, what should fans expect out of the Bills during the free agency window?
Part of that is we're still working through, like, what can we create? We're not trying to also pile up a huge dead cap hit in 1 year or anything like that. So we're trying to, we're looking at various, options, whether we extend a guy, whether we alter his current contract, whether we just convert him and again put it on the credit card and move it down. So we're looking at everything. Every guy's had. You saw we got Connor McGovern done, which was just a straight kind of move it down. We're working. We got kind of buckets for each.
Yeah, I can imagine
each one, and we're trying to massage it and get it down. Yes, the 255 number helped for what we need to get under, but you're right. Now, how much can you get under that you can go spend? And one of the things that gets lost, Chris, is you still have to save money for draft picks,
rookie pool,
and you're going to spend $3.5 million on practice squad players. Like, people don't realize, and then replacement players. Like, I think we spent over $5 million on replacement players this year.
Yeah, for injury, right?
So those things add up, and you can't go into the season with $100 in your pocket and expect to make it through a 17-game season. So all of those things. So just because you're $5 million under doesn't mean you really have $5 million to spend. We're also kind of preparing, to be able to go into the season and pay your practice squad and also replacement players.
I think the buckets thing is kind of interesting because you could take like one giant swing and like everybody's expecting Josh Allen. Maybe that's it. But if you do McGovern here, over here, just try to identify the guys that you really do want to build around, because you could do it again in two big swings. Josh Allen and Steph Diggs, and I'd be floored if they redid Diggs here. That's another option.
And I think that, what you heard from Brandon Beane today earlier on Diggs is that the expectation is he's going to be back, that there's no real move. But I also have to believe, and there have been some rumors swirling around there that if you had a guy like Justin Jefferson all of a sudden become available via trade, that Brandon Beane would be working to try and figure out a way, how do we get that kind of player on our team? Because that's what he did with Diggs.
Right. There's one big difference here, though, because you're going to make that move, and the Vikings are making that move for one primary reason. The same reason. They don't want to pay him.
That's right.
So it's like, yeah, if we're talking about, can we really afford this? Okay, Justin Jefferson next year, how do you fit that under the cap? So, yeah, of course, Brandon Beane, any GM, you're okay. Let's explore this move. Why would the Vikings do that? The only reason I can think of is this. They really recognize, hey, we need a quarterback. And maybe this is the avenue to move up in the draft. I've seen these mocks where perhaps the Vikings are trading with the Patriots. And maybe the Patriots don't want a quarterback, but could they use Justin Jefferson in a piece?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've got some takes on that top of the first round draft. I'm going to plant my flag. I've been waffling here the last few weeks in terms of what I think happens with the number 1 overall pick. I have come to a decision. I've come to a conclusion. I have an idea of what I think the Bears should do.
Is this real take, or is this Mike Dangerous sarcasm?
No, real take. Real take.
Okay.
I can be sarcastic, and the sarcasm in me says it doesn't matter because they'll screw it up no matter what they end up doing, because that's just what they do. But if you gave me a choice of this option or this option, this is the option I'm going to go with. I'll share that later.
Yeah, I got to take later too, because Brandon Beane, you hear him talk about the practice squad, and the practice squad is always, oh yeah. You don't realize, like, there are guys that actually kind of come up through this way. There's one name the Bills plucked off because he was on the street. And I'm not talking about Leonard Fournette. Somebody that is on the practice squad now that you're like, oh, maybe that guy will compete for a 53. The forgotten guy in the Bills practice squad.
I guarantee you he's got the attention of the Bills owner.
Oh, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
We'll get to that with I'll Drink to That. That's coming up later on this afternoon here in the next half hour or so. Next, we go to Indianapolis and we check in with our guy, Matt Perino, who's going to act as our ears and eyes at the NFL Scouting Combine. He covers the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. He's good with his time to join us every Tuesday at this time, and he joins us next in the Sports Bar. 866-4326 if you want to pull up a stool. 585-866-4FAN.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. update.
It's day 2 of the NFL Combine. Bills general manager Brandon Beane speaking earlier today, and he agrees speed is something he's shopping for.
We're always looking for that speed, explosiveness at various positions. And again, running back, tight end, receiver, whatever it is, you want guys that can explode without the ball, but you also want rack players, guys that Josh can get the ball in their hands in space, stuff that Joe Brady can scheme up.
Our good friend Matt Perino, he's in Indy, the Syracuse Post-Standard and the Shout podcast. Matt Perino joining us next year in the Sports Bar. Buffalo Sabres have won 3 in a row. Tonight they're in Florida. That's a 7 o'clock puck drop here on The Fan. The Amerks back in action coming up tomorrow night, hosting Syracuse. Head coach Seth Appert joining us next hour. Syracuse basketball tonight. Final home game of the regular season. They take on Virginia Tech. Gene Battaglia and the sports leader, The Fan, Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
So with a defensive coordinator now on staff in name, which was something you didn't have last year, is Coach Babbage calling the plays this season?
Well, we're going to see.
Okay. Still to be determined.
It's still to be determined,
okay.
Correct. Yeah, we're going to go through that, and there's a lot of days and steps between now and then, and,
gotcha.
and so we'll make that decision when we have to.
This is Bills head coach Sean McDermott. We heard from GM Brandon Beane earlier today. Buffalo Bills controlling their messaging here at the NFL Scouting Combine to help us decipher all that is happening in Indianapolis. We bring in Matt Perino, who's our ears and eyes at the NFL Combine. Do you believe Sean McDermott when he says we're still trying to sort that out? Or do you think he really has his mind made up, just doesn't want to share that it's going to be him calling the plays or Bobby Babbage calling plays in 2024, Matt?
I don't believe him, but I also think what he's doing is he's giving a first-year play caller some room to where if they get to the games and it's not going the way that they want, he can take over and take that role back. Or maybe they get to that point and he runs through a couple of situations and he just maybe feels he's not ready yet. And that's one of the things. You look at these two coordinators now, and I've been very complimentary of Babbage, Joe Brady. They're very young. They're very young in their roles. And obviously Brady has a lot more experience at the NFL level, calling plays. He did it in Carolina, then he did it again here in Buffalo. Babbage, it's a bit of an unknown. But, I think if you read between the lines, with Sean talking yesterday, he said, I like Bobby's vision for the defense. And I wrote that I think it's hard to have a vision for the defense or execute that vision if you're not the one kind of calling the shot. So I think eventually he is going to do that. I think they'll land on that. I think it's just about – that's a mindset with Sean. Like, he doesn't want to put too much on people's plate from the jump. He's always been that way with rookies, with young players, and I think it kind of bleeds over into coaches now that he doesn't have, like, those experienced guys. I mean, Dable, even Dennison, Dable, and Frazier were all these massively experienced coordinators. Now he's got guys that are, like, infants in that realm.
Matt, since we last talked, we learned the NFL salary cap a little more breathing room than we expected, $255 million. We saw the Bills last night making the first move, Brandon Beane restructuring the deal of Connor McGovern. And I guess the question is, I guess we can kind of speculate where the Bills go next. But what we were talking about earlier is a player that I thought last season, okay, he's played his last down with the Buffalo Bills, but now I'm kind of debating this in my own head. What about Tre'Davious White? What are the prospects that the Bills could actually go to the corner and maybe he'll do them a favor by taking less next year?
Yeah, see, that's the key word there. Brandon Beane, I listened to the start of the show, and he was obviously talking up Trey, and this is a really hard decision. No matter which way that they go, you have to balance, the professional side of things and, what Brandon's job is, and to evaluate the talent of a player, the cost, and then the production that you've seen. And, with a couple of those things, it's like those are definitely check marks against maybe bringing back Trey White. But I thought, when he talked about restructuring, he mentioned modifying a contract as something that may be part of the plan over the next couple of months. Not specifically with Trey White, but just in general with a lot of these players that they're looking at. I wonder if they don't just sit down with Trey White and say, listen, we want you back here. We think that you can get back to the player that you were. You're starting at a bit of a different place than you were last time because you just haven't played a lot of football for the last couple of years. Can we rework this thing a little bit? Give us some breathing room. We still want you part of this thing moving forward, but make it a little bit more tenable. I'd be very interested to see if they can't land on something. But then from Trey's perspective, I mean, you're always going to be a player where you're like thinking, I'm going to get back to the level that I was. You know, he could potentially, if he has a big year coming up, could potentially get another bite at the apple with another contract. Does he want to sacrifice dollars? Does he want to extend and change the course of this contract? Those are all the little nitty-gritty parts of the business side that are really complicated. I'm still leaning toward I don't know where I'm at. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I thought Trey White was going to be gone. And the more and more you hear them talk about it, I just think they're almost backing themselves emotionally back into a corner, knowing what he means to them, and that it seems like his rehab is trending in a really good direction.
What do his teammates think of Tre'Davious White? Because is that part of this too, Matt?
Oh, huge. I mean, if you want to talk about one of the most well-liked players in the locker room, a locker cleanout, we didn't get a chance to talk to Trey White. And over the last couple of years, he's kind of done an about face. He does not do a lot of media. He just doesn't seem really comfortable with it. We ask him, and he's like, what do you want to talk about? And he says, I'll get you next time. And then he doesn't really talk. I haven't gotten to the bottom of it. I don't know where that all stems from. But if you look at him behind the scenes, when no cameras are rolling, and he just gets to be Trey White, former captain, Bills cornerback, guys flock to him. The energy, the levity that he brings, the experience that he brings. I mean, the way that guys like Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson have talked about him and how important he's been to them. He's also, if you're looking at this from Sean McDermott's perspective, a tool in the locker room to develop young players at a position. They've developed a lot of players.
All right, so along those lines, let's stay at corner, because if you listen carefully to some of the winds and the directions that they're blowing here in the offseason, you can kind of determine what might be the future for some of these players and certainly prospects that are there in Indianapolis, Matt. Earlier this week, we heard on One Bills Live, Steve Tasker kind of propping up Kaiir Elam a little bit. And Kaiir Elam, I think, is a fascinating story here this offseason. As you know, we know what he wasn't last year. We know what we expect him to be, given that they invested a first-round pick in him. You've got a new positional coach, and Tasker is bold as to say, I think Kaiir Elam is starting week 1 at corner. Whoa, is that legit? Could that actually be the case? Or is this, hey, let's get some messaging out there to drive up the value of Kaiir Elam so that we can, if we need to, move on from this corner, knowing that we have a little bit of depth at the position now?
If you wanted to sell me a scenario where Kaiir Elam wins the starting job, I mean, I wouldn't laugh you out of the room. Like, I think he's a former first-round pick. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in there. And I think the key to the Kaiir Elam story is that John Butler's no longer there. When we were doing locker cleanout, I asked him about the process and the disappointing year 2 and whether or not that's impacted him, and has he leaned on anybody like his position coach. And he just looked back at me and said no comment, and basically kind of insinuated that it was Butler who was holding him back from playing. So now with Butler out of the mix, new cornerback-specific coach. So it's no longer the John Butler who was overseeing the corners and the safeties. They have a guy coming in here in Jamil Adai who can just work with the cornerbacks, the boundary guys. Taron Johnson, they have their own nickel coach now that they brought in as well. So I think Kaiir Elam's in a position to go into this year, re-energize himself around the fact of, okay, perception or reality, whatever it was, the guy that you felt like is holding you back is no longer there. And I still think there's a belief in him in the building. When Brandon talks about him, they're still pretty high on Kaiir Elam. The problem is you're going to probably have to beat out Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, who I think both showed very well last season. I think you can make an argument right now. You know, an argument that I might listen to even more right now, even with Trey White on the roster, I think Christian Benford at this point is CB1. The only thing where I hesitate with that is that he struggled to stay healthy, and availability, we've all talked about that enough.
Yeah, it's sticking with the secondary here, too. Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post Standard, our guest here. Hearing Brandon Beane talk about it, almost had like a take, like, hey, when it comes to safety position, how rare is it that you have a tandem that has been together 7 years. And hard for me to imagine year number 8 the way it kind of ended for Micah Hyde here. But what are your thoughts here on Poyer? And that's another player I go back and forth on, where I like Jordan Poyer's game last year, Matt, but I don't know if we can expect another year out of a player that is on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, and I think like the challenge is if Hyde retires or moves on, are you comfortable moving on from both of them and the institutional knowledge that Sean McDermott mentioned yesterday in one off season? I don't know if you're in that spot. Now the problem is there's some cap relief to moving on from Poyer. You add about $5 million. That could be very valuable. I mean, they did the Connor McGovern restructure, so you got about 4 there. You're going to get about 22, 23 with Josh Allen's restructure. You're probably going to do a couple extensions. You can do a couple other different things as well. And then you're starting to kind of find some space. You know, the $5 million that a potential Poyer release would create it's significant. It's something that I think you have to consider and what you want to be. If you want to be the version of this defense that played last season, I think Poyer showed that he's still got value left because he can play in the box. I wonder if that's not like the next progression in his career. I don't know personally how much he actually liked that, doing that, playing that way. But if it is something he embraces, or maybe they have another guy that they find for that role, I think that adds more value. It's going to come down to the dollars and cents of it as you move all of these things around. Where can you get potential replacements? And maybe they find a couple guys in the draft. Maybe there's a couple like unsung free agents. You know, the modern day Poyer and Hyde. Remember when they signed them back in 2017? Those weren't coveted guys that people were trying to bring into their buildings. They got them on pretty modest deals, and so I think they might be able to do that again if they go in that direction.
Could you see some creativity out of the Bills with who they do have in the defensive backfield? You already mentioned that you think Benford is CB1, but I've heard fans mention, hey, what about Benford back at safety? What about a Rasul Douglas, knowing his ball hawking abilities? You put him back there at safety, knowing that you have potentially Kyrie Elam on one side, Benford on the other, or Douglas on the other. Do you think they could get creative with the positions with some of these guys and play them in non-traditional roles?
Yeah, I don't know if that conversation truly happens until May, because we don't have a full picture of what the roster is. Like they have to go out and figure out who are the safeties that they're going to bring in. They don't have many on the roster right now. And I'm also interested to see, like, are you running this back with DeMar Hamlin again? Are you going to, figure that he's going to take another step back toward this season? Like, go back to before the injury, before the incident in Cincinnati. He was playing pretty good football for a late day 3 pick, who was asked to all of a sudden play 900 snaps in place of Micah Hyde. I thought there were some good things that Hamlin showed, and if he's your fourth safety, I wouldn't like be objectable to that. But you have to also figure, okay, if you do get in a situation where he has to play, do you trust him in that spot? I mean, they pretty much played everybody else at safety except for him, except for a couple spots last year. So you got to make those decisions. Once you make those decisions and you have an idea of what the roster is going to look like, then you can kind of pivot. I'm 100% no way, no how Christian Benford gets moved to safety at this point, only because he was so good at corner. I mean, it made me think back to Trey White early in his career, his first couple of seasons. Obviously not the all-pro level of caliber of a player, but if you talk about as a hitter, as a tackler, as somebody that can cover in space, somebody that can play off corner, somebody that has the ability to recover. I remember there was one play in a game, I can't remember the game, but somebody got beat deep, and it wasn't even Benford's man, and he came flying down the field and had a huge pass breakup in the game. It's like those little things where you just can't teach. It's why they've loved him this entire time. I also don't know about Douglas, only because I think he views himself as a cornerback, and I think there's more money out there at cornerback, and he's coming up on the last year of a contract, and he's coming off of a year where he just had, 6 takeaways in 7 games or something crazy like that. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit more challenging to move established guys to the safety position, but never say never, I guess.
Matt Perino, Syracuse Post Standard Shout podcast. Matt, I'm just curious, what is your agenda here this week, because this is, we're hearing from the decision makers here early on, but we're going to hear from the prospects a little later on. Are you going to these wide receiver press conferences? Are you checking things out? Like, kind of give us a lay of the land and what your plans are at the Combine this week.
Yeah, you got to be careful tonight, all right? This is Tuesday night in Indianapolis, and it tends to get turned up because now everybody's in town. We were out last night a little bit. Wasn't as busy as it'll be tonight. And we got an 8 a.m. wake-up call tomorrow. The defensive linemen get up to the podium. And there's a lot of guys I want to listen to because I think, like, you go into this process and there's a couple of guys that you probably like, right? Like, the kid from the Senior Bowl, Darius Robinson, who made a lot of noise. He's somebody that I'm going to kind of be looking at here tomorrow up in the early session. You want to kind of see what it looks like. Because I go back to the Combine 2 years ago, and you know who was the most impressive player at any position that year that skyrocketed on my own personal board just because I felt like he was going to be such a personality fit with the Bills? Trent McDuffie. Like, I could not stop talking about how impressive he was from his football IQ, from talking about the schemes, different schemes that he could potentially fit into, the versatility to his game, and just the general how well-spoken he was, how confident he was. You get all of those things. And, Sean was talking about it yesterday, like, there's a lot you could tell from a person's body language in these settings, like how they handle themselves under extreme stressful situations. And I kind of had that going into this week as well. So we'll get the D linemen, we'll get linebackers. I know that's not as juicy. I think the Bills are set there. Then we'll get wide receivers and defensive backs on Friday, so I'm pretty excited about that. I leave for Disney World on Friday night, so I'll miss all the offensive linemen on Saturday. But here's the thing, guys. I don't know if this is an offensive line draft. I mean, the Bills are bringing back 11 of 12. I don't know if there's a roster spot for an offensive lineman at this point.
I was going to just say, I think the McGovern move to restructure and have that be the first move of the offseason kind of speaks to what they were talking about earlier, what Brandon Beane was talking about earlier. This was the best offensive line performance that the Bills have had since McDermott and Beane have been in Buffalo, and you feel pretty good about that going into next season. It gives you a little bit of confidence. There is a guy that's on his way to free agency that feels like he should be a part of that equation. Do you think they bring back David Edwards?
Yes. The only thing that wouldn't bring him back is if he gets like a pretty good number on the free agent market. But he's a Cromer guy. Like, he's, if you want to talk about Cromer's impact in the room and developing or getting guys to kind of get up to speed on his system in year two for a lot of those guys, Dawkins, Morris, Spencer Brown, I think Edwards was key in that because he played for Cromer in L.A., and I think bringing that, experience from a player perspective was so massive. I think they want to get him back. He played a great role as that third tight end, but he's ultra valuable as your first guard off the bench as well. They were really lucky in that they didn't lose anybody last year, but Edwards can play right guard. He can play left guard. Obviously showed he can play that jumbo package as well. And maybe it's something that Edwards really likes because it's going to extend his career. This is a guy, remember, in L.A., was dealing with major concussion issues. And so having that reset button this past year, I think was really, really good for him.
Matt, just before we let you go, I wanted to get your take here because one of the rumors floating around there, and we'll be talking about this a little later in the show, Justin Jefferson, like the Vikings, if they don't want to pay him and he's on the move, would we worry about that if he were in New England without a quarterback, let's say? I mean, the Vikings really wouldn't do this, would they? And would the Bills would Brandon Beane actually be kind of investigating that move?
I don't think Brandon Beane's investigating that move, only from the perspective of you already got Diggs on the line. You're not trading him back to Minnesota, and even if you do, that comes with a dead cap hit. And then you're going to have to turn around and pay Justin Jefferson. I don't know if that's the move when you have all this draft capital this year and can probably be really aggressive in terms of what you want to do. Probably in the first round if you want, of course. That's the easy stuff. But I think the play more so is potentially trading back. And again, we got more of the process to go through. We want to look at all these players and get to know all these wide receivers a little bit more, how deep this class really is. But if you move back and now all of a sudden you've armed yourself with the amount of capital you'll need to move up in the second, third, and fourth round, because that's the problem a lot of times, right, guys? The Bills trade a day 2 or day 3 pick, go up in the first round. now they don't have any maneuverability in those second and third rounds, where we've seen teams like Detroit, Houston really hit on those early to middle of round 2 and 3. And I think that's maybe where you can get the value on a wide receiver, all while adding more draft capital. Again, you've got to really trust your evaluators in that spot, right? Because I think that's one of the main reasons why the Bills haven't traded or haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds the last couple of years, is because it's a real big gamble. We see a really wide range of outcomes with wide receivers. So I just think lessen the impact with a miss by adding more draft capital. I think 28 to 50 is a pretty, there's not a huge drop-off in talent at that level. And if you could pick potentially 2 times in that spot because you trade back, there's a lot of value there, guys. And there's a lot of receivers that I get excited about early day 2. George Pickens was a second-round draft pick. Tank Dell went in the 3rd last year. So a lot of guys that I think you can get.
All right, Matt, knowing that you're not going to be on with us next week, we're not going to bother you while you're at the happiest place on earth, but I'm jealous and I want to know.
Where's he going to
where you
resort?
staying?
Yeah.
What's the game plan? Let's be nerds for a second here. Let's be a couple of real dorky dads.
I like where your head's at. So I leave Friday night. I land in Orlando, hotel for one night. The kids and my wife fly in Saturday morning. I pick them up. We go over to we got a Verbo home.
Oh, nice.
We've never stayed in one of these before. A couple pools on property, so we'll do that whole thing. We got some her family's coming out as well, so we'll do the big family thing, and then it's off to the races on Sunday. Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, Planet Hollywood, and then we close the show with one more day of Magic Kingdom. We are gluttons for punishment in the Perino household, and we are going to the Nines. And it's my daughter's birthday, so I can't remember the exact name of it, but on her birthday, she's actually having a private princess breakfast that is going to be one for the memory books.
Dude.
I can't talk too much about it, dude. I'm going to start crying.
This is all hitting real close to home for me, man. I am so happy for you. You're going to have a blast.
Mike Danger,
unbelievable, just an unbelievable experience that you've got in front of you.
Cats in the Cradle.
No, let me tell you, man. Best experiences ever down there at Disney when you have kids that are into it, and it sounds like yours are, and they're the perfect age for it. They're going to have memories that last a lifetime. You and your wife are going to have a blast, the entire family. Man, that sounds like a lot of fun. The last thing you need to worry about next week is dealing with Gene and I. So we hope you have safe travels and a great vacation next week. And as always, appreciate you carving out some of your time in your schedule to be our eyes and ears there in Indianapolis, buddy.
Oh, anytime, and I look forward to 2 weeks from today when we really ratchet this thing up on free agency.
Yeah, well, no, I'm going to want to talk about full recap.
Right, yeah.
I don't want free agency. I want full recap. I want to know about how long the wait times were at Epcot, whether or not you did drinking around the world. You know, all the fun stuff, all the essential stuff. Free agency could take a backseat.
You know what? I love where both your heads at are today. And listen, Gino, I know I won't be here next week, but I'll miss you, buddy. Have a good couple weeks. Take care of yourself, okay, buddy?
I'll be fine, Matt. Well, thank you as always for your time, buddy. Matt Perino.
Matt Perino. After he's done in Indianapolis, off to the happiest place on earth. I'm not far. No Disney this year, which is weird, odd for us. We're taking the year off. We're doing Universal this year.
Okay.
First week of April.
All right.
Few days at Universal. Girls want to see Harry Potter, and they're all of a sudden into Harry Potter. It's so funny, as their dad, I remember telling them when they were younger, hey, here's a book for you to read. Get into this. Get into Harry Potter. And, of course, neither of them were influenced by what I had to say. It took something on social media for them to be like, oh, we should watch Harry Potter. We should read the books. We should. And now they're head over heels with Harry Potter. They need to see Harry Potter land. So that'll be part of the vacation.
As long as you're back in time for the eclipse.
Oh, the eclipse, where we claim ownership of the sun for one day. In Rochester.
That's right. Right next to Rory McIlroy.
We're so provincial.
Sun. Yeah,
yes,
the sun is ours.
It goes Abby Wambach, who no longer lives here, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who passed away tragically, and the Sun. I think that's the top 3 that we're claiming ownership of.
Well, God rest Philip Seymour Hoffman's soul, but I'm going to move Rory into that slot.
Okay.
All right. So, look, he's got property here. His wife is from here. I don't know if you knew that or not.
He's ours. We own him. We'll get to Aldrich. That's some takes on tap next in the sports bar. I've planted my flag. I've made up my mind. I know what I want to see the Bears do with their off-season situation. I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do because ultimately they're probably going to screw it up no matter what they do, but this makes the most sense to me.
Sports parents, youth level, high school level.
Ooh.
They can be bad.
No kidding.
Well, imagine somebody who has accomplished as much as anyone has ever accomplished in one sport, and this person could still be a bad sports parent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you'll enjoy my take on LeBron here.
Oh, good. Oh, well, I know, minimum, I'll appreciate it. At minimum. And also, with spring training going on, I'm ready to set a tone. I'm going to tell you what the game plan is here for this year's Major League Baseball season. It's a move that I think anybody listening to the Sports Bar can follow along and play along with throughout the course of the season. It's going to make for a more enjoyable Major League Baseball season. We know how long that regular season can be. We'll get to Seth Appert next hour as well. Amerks head coach stopping by at 4:25. Plus your phone calls. Lines are open. 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Free Odyssey app.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Day 2 of the NFL Combine. Bills general manager Brandon Beane speaking earlier today. Beane saying he'd like to bring back some of his own.
We got to protect the Bills first and foremost. We want the best for all our guys. Who wouldn't want Gabe Davis, Daquan Jones, run down the gamut? I mean, we love our guys. There's very few times I'm done with that guy. I wouldn't want to see him back in a Bills uniform.
Being today on One Bills Live, heard weekdays 1 to 3. Sabres have won 3 in a row. Buffalo tonight in Florida, 7 o'clock for our coverage here on The Fan. The Amherst back home tomorrow night taking on Syracuse. That begins a 3-game and 4-day stretch. Head coach Seth Appert joining us later this hour here in the Sports Bar. Syracuse basketball needing every win it can for their resume. Tonight the Orange, their final home game of the regular season, taking on Virginia Tech. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Get ready for the Combine.
Tamper Fest.
We'll talk about it. We'll make that decision when we need to. Right now, we're just one step at a time.
But number 72, Michael Clements, bitch boy. I hate them.
Daquan Jones has to be on this roster next year.
Leonard Floyd, that's my first guy, and my second guy is AJ Epinesa.
With the 28th pick,
There's going to be a quality player available at wide receiver for them at 28.
Mike Danger.
Do you trust Sean McDermott?
You have to, I suppose.
Do you, though? Do you trust Brandon Beane? Do you trust Terry Pagula? I don't 100% trust what's going on with that organization.
Gene Battaglia.
You're not going to see me flying high. I'm just telling you, Mike. I'm a new man. I'm a new fan.
As Buffalo tries again to beat the Florida Panthers tonight.
the Florida Panthers.
The absolute worst call of the season. No call. And enough's enough.
The refs have already admitted their mistake on the no call last night.
Shohei Ohtani, he has his debut today for the Dodgers.
It's showtime!
Honestly, sign me up for 50 bombs.
Whoa, 50?
Yep.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I know we're going to get to some takes on tap here in the Sports Bars. We welcome you back in and appreciate you listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950, and the free-to-download Odyssey app. I don't want to put you on the spot. I watched the Knicks last night.
Oh.
And Monty Williams, Detroit head coach, he's got an actual gripe. I mean, this is Monty Williams after that game.
The absolute worst call of the season. No call. And enough's enough. We've done it the right way. We've called the league. We've sent in clips. We're sick of hearing the same stuff over and over again. We had a chance to win the game, and the guy dove into Asar's legs, and there was a no call. That's an abomination. You cannot miss that in an NBA game.
If you saw it, you know the play that I'm talking about. Basically, DiVincenzo essentially tackled a guy on the court, no call, at the end of the game, with the game being tight, and the Knicks end up winning it. But I could argue that Detroit deserved to win that game, and they really did get hosed at the end.
Well, the Knicks let a nice, comfortable lead kind of get away to the worst team in the league, so... Okay, so the Knicks didn't cover last night. Well, boo-hoo.
Yes.
Boo-hoo, Monty Williams. Oh, by the way, you're going to get fined for that.
Sure, he'll get fined. But you know what? What I learned from that game, because I don't know enough about Detroit, don't watch a lot of Pistons basketball. They've got some young talent on that team, and I can't be angry at Monty Williams. Like, Monty Williams, good coach. I think he'll get something out of those guys here down the stretch.
Tonight's a sneaky good sports night with the Sabres were allowed to say their name out loud.
Yeah,
Syracuse
they're going for
in
four in a row. I mean, 4 in a row in this economy. You think we're going to get 4 wins in a row? They got to go to Florida and
you realize they've won 5 in a row on the road.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
they're playing better on the road than at home.
Yes. Our old buddy Sam tonight.
Yeah.
Just hate seeing guys find themselves in the NHL.
He'll be the next one to hoist the cup. And we'll be like, whatever.
Gene, killing me.
Whatever.
Absolutely
Football's
killing
at that point, like we'll be like, okay, how many weeks till the camp opens here?
Yeah.
I have a take here. Look, it's difficult. Would you agree with this? Being a sports dad, it's got some highs. It's also, as your kid kind of goes along, you find times where you just got to bite your tongue to the point it bleeds. It can be difficult.
It is difficult. It's challenging. You want to be as involved as you can be. It's a hard thing to let go and let the people that are, coaching or working with your kid, just let them do their thing because you feel like you know what's best for your kid at all times. I miss it. I miss all of it, man. I mean, the closest thing I have to it is my daughter playing golf at Mercy, and it's not the same as being a part of a team or knowing your daughter, your son's teammates, and the construct of the team, it's the coaches of the team, the whole thing.
Right, and it's not not a lot of travel involved with golf too.
Not
right?
a lot.
No, not a lot. But look, you and I, we can identify. I think a lot of us can. LeBron James, he's blind to it too. The king getting irked at ESPN's latest NBA mock draft, moving Bronny James out of the 2024 class to 2025, is they don't think he's worthy of being drafted. In a since deleted post, the elder James writing, "Can y'all please let the kid be a kid? If y'all don't know, he does not care about a mock draft. He just works, earned, not given."
Okay,
wait, time out. You're the one caring about the mock draft.
That's right.
That, not him. Is this about Bronny or is it about you, LeBron? Because back in January, you, LeBron, said that Bronny could play for the Lakers, quote, right now. Easy. Easy.
Uh-huh.
Someone who's averaging 5.5 points a game as a freshman at USC. Is he ready to make that jump? LeBron, that's you who put the pressure on. You who put him in your first round mock. You know who LeBron reminds me of? Another sports dad that we all vilified. Couldn't stand the way he pumped the tires of his kids. And one of his kids actually did get drafted by the Lakers. LeVar Ball. Congratulations, LeBron. You're now LeBron Ball.
I still don't understand. I mean, I get why people didn't like Ball because he was so bombastic with how much he pumped his kids. But at the same time, he understood the business end of it. And I think that he was also a part of why his kids got to where they got. And I don't know that they get as far as they get without their dad being as supportive and just being there for their kid. So I don't want to get on LeBron for being a dad who's looking out for his kid. The added pressure and saying that he should be a first round pick. He could serve
playing for the Lakers.
Yeah, all that
next year.
stuff is crazy. That's all crazy. That's all crazy, and it's part of it. So, but I do appreciate, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say the word appreciate. I do appreciate that he cares that much about his kid that he would use his following and sacrifice his brand, tweet something out, and then have to go back and delete it because he realizes probably not a good idea. Or somebody got to him and said, "Get rid of that. That's not good for the brand."
Yeah, that's that was not a good look. I know how this is going to play out, Danger. Look, Bronny not going to come out. He'll go back to USC.
Should.
Yeah, and maybe he gets up to double digits next year. Maybe he improves his game a little bit. And LeBron, you hear this talk that he's going to sign one more kind of big contract with the Lakers. The two of them are going to play together with the Lakers. He will go undrafted. Lakers will bring him in and will appease LeBron here.
And that's whatever. That's fine. I mean, LeBron, as he's been through his entire NBA career, is better when he says less. Great player. At worst, the second best player of all time. At worst. But he just needs to pipe down. He just... Everything about how he's handled himself with his words, his actions off the court feels like a PR disaster. Just say less and play more.
I would say no for this reason.
The decision?
Well, the decision's bad. That was bad. Okay, you're citing the one, but I'm
just
saying
all of it.
No. I like as far as controversy here, in the whole world of LeBron James,
he's not a bad guy.
No, he's not.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm saying the things that he says make me cringe, and I think make a lot of people cringe. And you want to believe that he understands what life outside of his echo chamber actually is like. And I think he's completely detached. So
how do you think LeBron exits? Does he go to the Jordan room and buys whatever Vegas expansion team and just kind of does that route?
Don't know.
Because he's not, what you're saying, he's not going to be a commentator or anything like
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that, and maybe somebody walks away and he fills that void, but he feels bigger than that. He feels like he'd be bigger than that. And I'm not wishing Chuck or Shaq to go anywhere. They're too good. I don't want either of those guys.
No.
I don't want either of those guys to get replaced by LeBron. All right, Gino, I am holding my breath this week with the idea here that the Bears and the pride of Section 5, their GM, Ryan Poles, could swing a transformational type of move this week by trading out of the number 1 overall pick. I'm planting my flag. Justin Fields may not be a $100 million quarterback. He might just be average. But when you look at all of the holes on this roster for the Chicago Bears, the best bet, long-term success, get as many valuable first and second round picks as you can and start to build around Fields from the inside out. Caleb Williams may be a sure thing, but we've also seen how poorly it can go with quarterbacks going first overall. I'm done waffling. Trade number 1 overall for a haul. Keep Fields because your return on a trade would be meager. We've discussed it. What do you think you get for Fields? A third? A second? You're not getting value. Keep him.
I don't even think that's part of the conversation. It's identify who is the closest thing you believe to being a franchise quarterback and go get him. See, you don't know as a Bears fan
what that's like.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be mean.
It might be Fields. Maybe it was as simple as saying, you know what, Shane Waldron, you're going to get a shot at this.
The ceiling with Justin Fields, I'll tell you, it's Jalen Hurts. Like they have like an organization and a team all built around him. And Hurts, you brought this up years ago, and I think it was a Chicago radio guy, ironically.
Can you win with or can you win because?
You cannot win with Justin Fields.
You can win with Justin Fields. You have won with Justin Fields. Can you win because of Justin Fields? And when we had our guy on, David Haw from Mully and Haw at 670 The Score on Friday, I love that he actually said that you need a quarterback that you can win here because of. That's their thing. Like in Chicago, everybody that's a fan knows, can you win with or because of this guy? I think you can win because of Justin Fields. We just haven't necessarily seen it yet.
Okay, and then are you prepared with whoever you take? Caleb Williams then wins the Super Bowl or ends up being that generational guy.
I've been living with that with Patrick Mahomes. Yes.
So you're going to make the same mistake again. Because I'm sure that was, hey, we can go just kind of wait.
Well, I believe that if you're able to get, let's say it's 8 draft picks. I don't know what it is, but it's a haul. And you have between this year and next a total of 8, or dare I even say in the sports bar, 9 draft picks that are first or second round.
9 times.
Then you've got the pieces to build around a quarterback and let him play his game, but also have weapons around him and talent around him so he's not getting killed every time he drops back to pass.
Our number is 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Brad in Rochester checking in. Hey, Brad.
Hey, I love the whole thing about trades, and I got a trade that is off the wall a little bit, but I think it could work. Why don't the Bills pull a Diggs 2.0 and trade for Justin Jefferson? Trade a first this year, first next year, a fourth and a fifth. Get Jefferson at $19 million. He's with his wide receiver coach that he was with at LSU. 2 number 1s to go with Josh.
How do you pay?
We brought this up.
Thanks, Brad. Because you have to pay Justin Jefferson next year,
right? And you still have Diggs
and Von Miller and all these other that's the problem.
The idea of it is fantastic, and it's easy to get there when you consider what the Bills did just a few years ago with Diggs. Different situation, and you're going to have to make Justin Jefferson the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And don't get understand also the Vikings, if there is truth to the rumor that they're floating out Justin Jefferson, they're doing that here in advance of the draft because they want to be in business for a quarterback just like anybody else.
Yeah, and they want to see what the market is. And I'll guarantee you this, Brad, where that sounds attractive, it's a late round first. Like there would be a team in the top 10 that would be thinking, do we want to take this unsure thing or go get this wide receiver and just move down to the look, Brad, I'm all for it. If the Bills found a way, sign me up.
Yeah,
but
none of us would complain if that happened. But I just think the likelihood of that happening is so out of the realm of possibility given where the Bills are.
I could see something like this. You reunite the two, being Kirk Cousins, free agent, come on into New England, and New England trades down, and part of that package is number 3 overall, and that's why, like, the Vikings would do that. Then they could move up and get the quarterback that they choose. Would be for Marvin Harrison at number 3.
Right. It's a great thought, Brad, and we've been thinking about that. As soon as there were little whispers that the Vikings may be trading Justin Jefferson, like, are you kidding me, really? Well, keep in mind, we are in the season of lying, and teams are going to say whatever they need to say to put themselves in the best position possible come the end of April.
Yeah, and who knows where that's starting from? It might not even be the Vikings.
It could be
somebody. It could be the agent. When looking at cheap labor for the Buffalo Bills next year, and we're going to be talking about this because 6th, 7th round picks are going to make this team because a lot of the depth will be gone. Well, look at the practice squad from last year, and they're names you're familiar with. Eli Anku, Andy Isabella. If you were keeping tabs at camp last year, one of the final cuts, well, the Bills stashed Richard Garage, the offensive tackle on the practice squad all year. He could be ended up on the 53. I'm going to give you 2 other names for camp. One is a little out there. Kendall Williamson, undrafted rookie free agent, corner out of Stanford. Maybe we'll see a lot of him at camp. But also the forgotten veteran free agent that was added, wide receiver KJ Hamler. Do you remember that? The Bills brought him in and stashed him. He flashed some in his rookie year in Denver, but his last 2 years were kind of injury riddled.
When did they bring him in?
I want to say November, December, somewhere around there.
God, I don't even remember that.
Yeah, so much was going on at that point. But Danger, we're talking about a potential 5th wide receiver battle on the roster. A healthy KJ Hamler pushing Justin Shorter?
Healthy. I think at minimum, you've got somebody, if healthy, who can be electric in the return game. If there is a return game in 2024, we're hearing a lot of things about the competition committee, and the punt game will still be the punt game, but kickoffs may be going the way of the dodo, or at least going the way of the XFL. We'll see.
I'd be shocked if they made the move this year, but at least we're having the conversation. Like, what
they
are we
could
doing
absolutely have it done this year. I mean,
they could, but I think you would want to give teams, especially heading in, what are we paying a returner for?
Right? Yes. I've always liked Hamler. I remember Hamler at Penn State. I'm sure Terry Pagula remembers Hamler at Penn State as well. If he's healthy, he could be dynamic. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field.
Okay, so then maybe I'm a little off there as far as who we battle with. What about Deontay Hardy? If KJ Hamler would be the guy that you could.
Yeah, Hardy's got maybe a little bit more time and a little bit more understanding, but
Hardy made 2 plays this past year. One, the Giant game, well-designed play. You're like, boom, touchdown. It was probably that Ken Dorsey signature moment. The other one, of course, being the kick return.
Big plays.
Big plays, but what else other than that, though?
Yeah, well, for what you're paying the guy, that might be enough.
Yeah.
Right? For what you invested in the guy, that might be enough. And could you get more with a guy like Hamler? Possibly. I'm intrigued by that. Spring training in full effect. Gino, I've decided to set a tone. This year, I know I say every year with baseball, I'm going to, be more committed. I want to do more. This year, for Major League Baseball season, I'm going in prepared. Step 1, going to go by the sporting goods store. I'm going to pick up a couple of score books, Gino. Going to need them. I'm going to just watch along from my couch, keep score all season. Also going to pick up some seeds in bulk. Go with my beverage of choice once a week, at least once a week, just to set a tone. Keeping score, eating seeds, drinking my beverage of choice. You can have your Roto League, Gino. My move, keeping score while watching from my couch.
You wouldn't know how to keep score.
Baloney. I kept score when I was a kid all the time. Went to ball games all the time.
6-4-3.
Double play.
How?
6 is the shortstop. 4 is the second baseman. First baseman is 3. 6-4. You don't think I know 6-4-3 double play? Get out of here. What kind of baseball? I'm a baseball fan. I don't love baseball. I'm a fan.
You've never kept score in your life.
I kept score all the time when I was a kid. I couldn't hit.
I should bring it
field.
when I would go to a major league game. I would keep score. I know that shocks
when you were a kid.
No,
I did the same thing when you were an adult. You did it. I did it when I was a kid. I'm saying now I'm going to do it as an adult, sitting from my couch, just to set a tone. This is a strong move. With a bag of seeds.
What, you're going to do it like you'll sit down like, oh, let's watch this Mets game tonight. Oh, another backward K. What does the backward K mean?
Struck out looking.
I give you credit.
Gino, I've got a garage, a screened-in garage. And all summer, I will be projecting 124 inches of high-definition baseball glory. You don't think I'm going to be out there with a score at least once a week with a scorecard, a bag of seeds, and a cold one?
Well, you kind of like, you know how you don't like eat the seed. You just kind of like crack it a little bit. You get the salt, and then you spit out the
Absolutely.
shell. Yeah.
Well, we're going to go in bulk. Going to go to BJ's, buy in bulk. And
you're going to spit out the shell right in your garage?
I got a broom. I got a floor down there. I got the floor down in the garage. I get the broom. If I have to sweep it up afterwards, I'll sweep it up.
Who came up with the idea that sunflower seeds, like, hey, kids, you can't be chewing tobacco, but here, have these seeds and chew on them. Oh,
love me a good sunflower seed. Nothing wrong with that. I'm ready for it. I'm 70 degrees today. Got me all geared up thinking about what I'm going to be like in my garage this summer during baseball season. Keeping score. Chomping on some seeds, enjoying my beverage, sitting on my butt, watching baseball in the garage. All right, speaking of moves, what kind of moves are happening here with the Sabres and the Amherst? Seth Appert, Amherst head coach, joining us next. Just fresh from the 7-game in 11-day stretch, and a couple of matchups against a team on deck here that had their way with the Sabres. Late last week, late last week. Belleville, both Friday and Saturday. Before that, we've got a game tomorrow night to talk about at home at Blue Cross Arena with Syracuse coming to town. So lots to get to with Amherst head coach Seth Appert, who joins us next in the Sports Bar. This hour of the Sports Bar on the Fan is brought to you by the Farmer's Dog. Fresh, human-grade dog food delivered right to your door.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Dave.
Bills general manager Brandon Beane today speaking at the NFL Combine, and well, he agrees. Speed is something he's looking for.
We're always looking for that speed, explosiveness at various positions. And again, running back, tight end, receiver, whatever it is, you want guys that can explode without the ball, but you also want rack players, guys that Josh can get the ball in their hands in space, stuff that Joe Brady can scheme up.
Sabres, are they turning things around? They've won 3 in a row. First time they've done that this season. Actually, in the last 5 road games, they've won them all. Tonight, another roadie. They're in Florida. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock here on the Fan Rochester. The Amerks back home tomorrow night taking on Syracuse. We'll talk to head coach Seth Appert coming up next year in the Sports Bar. Syracuse basketball tonight, final home game of the regular season. The Orange taking on Virginia Tech. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
Neat or on the rocks? It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
As Rusak feeds on a goal, quick shot on for a return shot. They score! Off the right side, Roseanne was there. He's had a dry spell, but bangs it in. And the Amerks have come away with a power play goal to take a 1-0 lead.
Don Stevens on the call there. More Amerks hockey on your home of Rochester Americans hockey, the Fan Rochester, coming your way tomorrow night at 7 o'clock with Syracuse coming to town as the Amerks host the Crunch, Blue Cross Arena. We welcome in, as we do every Tuesday at this time, Rochester Americans head coach Seth Appert. Go ahead and put an evaluation on the 7-game and 11-day stretch, Coach, because we know that was a tough stretch and a big focus for you and your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always want to win more, but, looking at how demanding the schedule was, a couple games not set up very well with rested teams versus us traveling and playing. And, we got 8 points. We'd prefer to have won the last 2 games in overtime instead of losing the last 2 in overtime, but we still finished 3-2-2, found a way to get points in 5 of the 7 games, gave ourselves a really good chance to win all 7. So all in all, in totality, it's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good, and we kept ourselves in a really good position, and now it gets tight down the stretch here.
Yeah, as Seth, where you have a young team as compared to some other teams, and you always look at special teams as far as how a team is developing. What do you think about your penalty kill here so far here in this last stretch?
Yeah, PK has been great. Power play is trending a little better lately. It's still not as good as it was earlier. Obviously, we'll get a little help with that with Kulik coming back into the lineup. But the PK, Nathan Pace runs our PK, and, the season numbers of our defensive statistics just won't look good all year because the first 15 games just weren't good enough. We had a lot of young D playing, we had a lot of young forwards playing, and we just weren't good enough defensively. And so your PK season numbers never going to recover from that. But the last 20, 25 games, it's been excellent, and it's been a really strong point for us here recently.
Talk a little bit about the roster adjustments happening here with guys coming up, guys coming down, dealing with injuries and everything going on. What can we expect here tomorrow night in terms of players that might be absent that we would normally be seeing in a Amerks jersey?
It's day-to-day right now with a few guys. Obviously, you come out of the 7 and 11, especially finishing it with physical teams, and then overnight travel to Hershey and another physical team. And, so we got a few guys that are day-to-day that'll be game-time decisions. But it does look promising that Yuri Kulik will be back, which is very beneficial. Cale Clegg, we got back from Buffalo, so we have more depth on the blue line than we've had. We lost Tyson Jost up front to Buffalo. So that's great for him, certainly, but he was playing big minutes for us. So, and then we called up Damian Giroux from Jacksonville, who has given us very good minutes this year.
Yeah, I like having Giroux back up. You got a little bit of depth. One player I want to ask you about, Isak Roseanne, who, I don't know, if gripping the stick is something we want to refer to, or is it just bad puck luck? But the fact that he's showing some signs of life here in these last few games, Seth, your thoughts on Roseanne and where his game is at right now?
His game is very good. The puck hasn't gone in for him as much lately. And I would say that that's for his line mates too. I mean, Jost was a little snake bitten. Kozak has had massive scoring chances the last 6-7 games. And those are the guys Rosie's been playing with a lot. So, his game's been really good. His defensive game's never been better. He's penalty killing. You could easily argue he's in our top 2 or 3 penalty killers, which is really impressive at his age in this league. So he's doing great things. He's going to score. I'm not worried about that. That kid can score, and usually, guys like him and Kulik, when they score, it comes a little bit more in bunches.
Seth, we know how tight the North Division is, and we also know that this is the time of year where we do take a peek at the standings and kind of see where we are. Tied for 4th, 56 points. Toronto with a game in hand. Belleville doing what they needed to do to climb up the standings and taking care of their business last week. And you have an opportunity to redeem yourself here, and the team for them to redeem themselves against Belleville this coming weekend. What's the outlook here? You got 3 games coming up here with teams that you're looking up at in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, it's playoff hockey now, and it will be from here on out. 2nd to 7th in our division, and it seems like it's like this every year. Cleveland is separated a little bit, but 2nd to 7th is one good week or one bad week, and that's just how tight it is. And a bad week, and you're out of the playoffs, and a good week, and you're looking at 2nd or 3rd and probably sitting in a bye. So that's just the North Division. You have to get accustomed to it. The pressure is good. It makes you better and battle-tested for the playoffs. Most divisions have a couple teams that are having train wreck seasons, and we just don't. Nobody's going anywhere. Laval and Utica are 6 and 7. They're too good. They would be in the middle of the pack, if not higher, in most other divisions. They are really good teams. Utica beat Syracuse on Sunday. Those teams aren't going away. So the teams that make it are going to have to earn their way in.
Seth Appert, our guest here in the Sports Bar, is the Amerks home tomorrow night against Syracuse, then heading up to Belleville for 2. And Seth, maybe this is a question for this time next week, but as the NHL is barreling down to this trade deadline coming up on March 8th, which is really right around the corner, I mean, in terms of the American Hockey League, how, if at all, does this affect you and your message to the team here, and for any player that might see his name come up in a rumor here or there? Because certainly there are rumors out there, but that's all they are at this point. What would be your message to this young team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, focus on what you can control. You can't control rumors. You can't control internet blogs and tweets and things of that nature. And all you can control is your daily process and how you go about your work every day, the work you put in, how competitive you are, how well you take care of your body. And that's it. And, trades happen. It's professional sports. Nobody wants to get traded. Well, that's not true. Some people do want to get traded, but when it happens, it happens. You have to deal with it, but there's no reason to sit there and fret about it. And, for the most part, there's not a lot of rumors about the American League guys, although, we are a team and an organization with a lot of prospects. In a week and a half, we'll see what happens around the league. It's been pretty quiet in the NHL at this point, but I would imagine in the next 7-8 days, it's going to start heating up pretty good.
All right, can we role play a little bit here, Gene, before we ask Seth about tomorrow night's opponent?
Yeah.
What would Seth Appert say about the Syracuse Crunch if we're going to ask him that question?
Well, they're heavy. They're a very heavy veteran team, and we're going to have to really come to work, and it's going to be a full 60 minutes. Is that a good answer, Seth?
What did we forget?
That's great.
All right.
My work is done here. I taught you well.
Gene will be hosting your press conference tomorrow.
Well, I can't. I don't, Seth, man, I don't have hair, period, much less what you have there, so I couldn't possibly.
You can answer the question, and I'll stand there, and they can show my hair.
Okay,
so.
That'll work. I mean, at this point of the year, you've seen Belleville a bunch of times. You've seen Syracuse a bunch of times. So this almost kind of feels like the playoffs have begun here a little early here, Seth. There's no more secrets between these teams.
No, in the North Division, there's not a lot of secrets anymore at this time of the year. You know the team's tendencies, you know their strengths and weaknesses. It becomes a bit of a chess match. You make an adjustment, they adjust to that. They make an adjustment, you adjust back. So it becomes a bit of a chess match. And they're hard-fought games. I mean, we've had a lot of overtime games with Syracuse. The Belleville game on Friday went to overtime. The game they beat us on Wednesday was 1-1 with 9 minutes to go. I mean, that's the kind of hockey it is. Both these teams are, as you said, they're big, physical, older teams. Belleville, I think, has 8 veterans on their roster, so they have to even sit vets on certain nights. And Syracuse just got Barb Belay back, who was the best player in our division last year. So, we're playing 2 really good hockey teams here this week, and we will be tested, and we'll have to be as exhausting and as demanding and challenging as that 7-game stretch was. This 3 and 4 will be right back into the pressure cooker with 2 hard-nosed teams, and we'll have to be ready for it.
Seth, if the Amerks have an edge in the division, what would you say it is?
Speed of team and speed of pace of play. I think that was, we have a fast team, but we also play fast. That there's a difference. We try to be a team that plays fast, transition the puck. So when we're at our best, we're forcing teams into turnovers and then being able to counter and transition and utilizing that speed. When we're at our best in the offensive zone, it's when we're using our speed and our cutbacks. And, when a lot of our undersized forwards get into the wall against, Philip Myers at 6'6", 230 pounds, that's not playing to our advantage. So we need to get that puck, get out of the corner, and use our speed to our advantage.
All right, Seth, I'm going to sound a little more like a fan here than, a journalist or anything, but the Sabres, I'm starting to buy back in a little bit. I mean, was this just a matter of the puck starting to bounce the team's way? You observe the Sabres just like we do. I mean, why has it worked here last few games up in Buffalo, would you say?
Well, I think the underestimated thing from the fans' perspective is what, going through actual pressure of making the playoffs in a season, the impact on a young team. They're young, and you got to grow with that. That's a learning curve, and then they had some injuries to deal with, and you're not getting overlooked by opponents anymore because they know if they have an off night against you, you can hang a big number on them. And teams have pride; they don't want to have a big number hung on them like the Sabres did a lot last year. And then because you're a better offensive team now, viewed that way, you're getting a lot of teams starting goalies. And, all of those things make it demanding. And I think they've done a really good job adjusting lately, especially. And I think they're playing really good hockey. The game the other night was exciting. To see how competitively they played. And obviously, Upi is playing fantastic. And it's just such a great story, and I couldn't be happier for the kid because he is an unreal teammate in person.
I just kind of watch the Sabres, and I think the Amerks to an extent too. And we talk a lot about the veteran presence that exists in the North Division and these teams being older and heavier and more veteran. I mean, that's something that I think can't be overstated. And can more be done organizationally, or does that come at the expense of some of this youth, some of these prospects? Because, man, when I watch the Amerks, when I watch the Sabres, I think there are a lot of boys out there playing a men's game. They're holding their own in a lot of instances, but in a lot of instances, it almost is like watching two different sets of teams, honestly, because of how much of a gap there is in age.
It's a tricky balance, and obviously I'm not in management, I'm in coaching. So those management and scouts handle that, and I trust ours at a high level. But it is a tricky balance. I'll just speak to the Amerks side of it. A couple of years ago, what if we signed 2 or 3 more veteran forwards? Then our J.J. Peterka and Jack Quinn in go-to roles? Is the pressure on them down the stretch to will us into the playoffs and then to get us on a playoff run, or are they just deferring to 3 or 4 Sean Malones instead of 1 Sean Malone and 1 Michael Mersch? In the last 2 years for us, if we have another 3 or 4 vets, is Yuri Kulik and Isak Rosean, do they have the pressure on them to deliver, or we're going to lose? And the growth that comes through that, it's not always perfect, but the growth that comes through that is so valuable, failure or success. And so it is a tricky balance. It is great to have some veteran presence, but you also don't want to block those experiences from your young players.
I feel like I'll use a player as an example. Middlestead, and I don't think you had the chance to ever coach. I can't remember if he was here at all when you were here. I don't think so. But I think of how long he's been within the organization now. And I feel like watching him from his rookie year to where he is now, it just now feels like, okay, Casey is hanging with some of the older guys, the veteran guys, because he's kind of become a veteran himself. Does it take that long for the development of some of these kids to grow into these roles and to grow into their game at this high level?
Sometimes it can. I mean, look at how long it took Landeskog and McKinnon and Rantanen and those guys in Colorado.
Sure.
Look at how long it took Austin Matthews and Marner and Nylander to win a playoff series in Toronto last year. It's a hard league. It's the best players in the world, and it's not easy for 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds to win and be drivers in that league. So it is a difficult process when you're young, and I think it is a reminder that Sabres are the youngest team in the league, and again, probably similar to last year, they're trending in a very good direction right now, and I think they're playing their best hockey this season.
Yeah, it's Seth, last one for me, and we've gone the whole way here without talking about the goaltenders. I mean, it's like Devin Levi, and again, we talked to you last week, the day after that spectacular performance up in Toronto, and you've had this balance here of not overusing Levi, putting in a Tokarski here and there, but what you've seen out of the 22-year-old, because now we're already starting to look at this as like the push for the playoffs here, and I would assume that Devin will be the guy here that if for nothing else, just give him the experience of what these games with this additional pressure looks like here at this level.
Well, yeah, twofold. One, he's a prospect at a high level, and we need to develop him. Two, he's earned it. On top of it, he's earned the net. He's been outstanding, and he's given us a chance to win every night out. Even in a night that statistically might be a little bit of an off night, the Belleville game, it's 1-1 with 9 minutes to go. So he's been really good. He was excellent. We were really good in Hershey as well. We defended extremely well, knowing that we were a little tired after that travel, and we needed to make sure we couldn't chase that game. That's not a game you can get down in and chase when you're that fatigued against a team of that caliber. And I thought we did a really good job defending the interior and giving up C chances instead of A chances. So Devin's been great. Tokarski also was excellent on Friday night last week. Just really gave a gritty, gutty kind of performance to help us. Almost had a shutout. It felt like he was going to win that game 1-0 just with how dialed he was. But I think we're defending at a much better clip right now, PK and 5-on-5, and our goaltending has been very strong.
3 games in 4 days ahead for the Rochester Americans. It starts tomorrow night at home, Blue Cross Arena, as the Amerks host the Syracuse Crunch. Head coach Seth Appert joining us in the Sports Bar. Seth, appreciate our time every week and can't wait to talk again next week. Best of luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Seth.
Amerks head coach Seth Appert, always great with his time and giving us, like a little bit more. I just love the insight. Like, we can talk about X's and O's and this player's doing well, this player's doing well, but ultimately when you look at the Amerks, when you look at the Sabres and you kind of view this organization in its totality, it's young, man.
Well, and I wasn't going to go down this road for Seth, but I want to go back 2 years ago. And this is the this is we're all conflicted, right? If you follow the Amerks, you want to win, you understand there's another purpose here in development. Right? And you could have brought in more veterans 2 years ago. And you're facing Laval. Nice win over Belleville the first round. Now it's time for Laval. And that's a veteran team with no prospects or whatever. And they win in triple overtime and they advance. And I remember thinking, yeah, good for you. You know what? That's going to get you up in Montreal someday? Not a lot. So good for you. And I'm thinking, you know what? Our future is brighter in this organization now. Fast forward, they're pretty much identical here in the NHL standings. Yeah. But I remember, wait a second, we're doing this correctly. They're shortcutting this. So I'm hoping that with this balance, and then, look, I want to just kind of put that out there, is as long as you have the goaltender that can steal playoff games, and Levi has this ability, He has the mental makeup. You have goal scorers on. If how these playoff games get called, and you're fast, and the other teams are not. Why not the Amerks to get back to where they were last year?
I don't have a problem with that, and I agree with everything you're saying. I think the hardest thing for all of us as fans is to exercise the kind of patience that it takes to watch these kids become men. And I mentioned Middlestat because that's just the one that's obvious to me. Middlestat was a kid when he started with the Sabres.
We had him here in studio.
I was going to say, so much so that he had to come to Rochester just for a bit. I'm sure he didn't want to, but he did. And he came in. We talked to him, and he was great. But that helped him. And nothing can speed up his development, his growth, his age. Remember when he was drafted? He couldn't do a pull-up. Like, the kid was small. He was just small.
Yeah.
He's a man now. He's like hanging. He's like out there mixing it up and getting physical in a man's league. And that's the kind of patience we have to exercise across the board with all of these prospects. Like, we love some of what we see from the Peterkas and the Tage Thompsons, and you want to see more, and you expect more out of Dahlin's been good. He's made some mistakes, but he was good in that Carolina game. You just want them to. We can't speed up the time any faster than it goes. It goes as it goes, and you just hope that the season's going to end in a disappointment, right? For the Sabres specifically.
Well,
you got to bring it. So I think you have to bring it some
like
bets.
if I could say, like, yes, what you're saying is all true, but it's also true that Kevin Adams is a little inactive. When you got to make the move. You've got to spend a little bit of money, and the places you did spend money on the blue line, maybe not the results you were kind of hoping for. So it's not just spending money; it's bringing in the right type of player. Here in Rochester, the team is in a playoff spot right now in probably the best division here in the American Hockey League. I'm fine with what has happened here in
Totally
Rochester.
fine.
Yeah.
And Seth and his staff have done an amazing job developing these guys. And you know that because when you see them play for the Sabres, they're winning games for the Sabres. JJ Peterka has won games for the Sabres. Jack Quinn won games they're winning games. They're stepping up into these roles, but we can't advance time any faster than it goes. These guys are only going to get better with age. The only thing that you could have done more of, I suppose, is bring in more of that veteran experience. But then to that point, to Seth's point, all right, yeah, you do that, and then you've got guys that are inactive or guys that aren't getting the experience that they need to be able to grow into those roles. So it's a real delicate balance.
Yeah, like what they're doing in Belleville. I didn't realize they have so many veterans they can't play them all. Like, okay, what are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. All right. Really appreciate Seth stopping by as he does every Tuesday at this time. Amerks fans, make sure you put it in your phone there. A little reminder that Seth Appert joins us every Tuesday afternoon at 4:25 to talk Amerks hockey here in the Sports Bar. We'll get to happy hour next in the Sports Bar. We heard from Brandon Beane at the NFL Scouting Combine today. We can recap some of his comments on One Bills Live as well. What is the future of Trey White? Do we feel like some of these outgoing free agents could get re-signed? And we do have our first restructure of the offseason to tell you about with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and there is this also, is it a wild rumor? But like the idea that Justin Jefferson could get traded? Welcome to the season of lying here, folks.
Happy hour is next. We'll get to a round of shots and last call at 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Mike Danger for FanDuel Sportsbook, official partner of 95.7 The Fan. Bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel every Thursday with TNT Thursdays. Now, it doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win on any NBA on TNT game. NBA same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance to score a bigger payday. Now, however you want to play, all you need to do is just head over to FanDuel.com/Mike to bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay with TNT Thursdays. That's FanDuel.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and physically present in New York. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the country.
9BF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Day 2 of the NFL Combine. Buffalo Bills general manager Brandon Beane speaking earlier today, and Beane saying, yeah, he'd like to bring back some of his guys.
We got to protect the Bills first and foremost. We want the best for all our guys. Who wouldn't want Gabe Davis, Daquan Jones, run down the gamut? I mean, we love our guys. There's very few times I'm done with that guy. I wouldn't want to see him back in a Bills uniform.
Being today on One Bills Live, heard weekdays 1 to 3 here on The Fan. The Sabres tonight here on The Fan, taking on Florida. Buffalo has won their last 3, and on the road they've won their last 5 in a row. Rochester Americans, they're back in action coming up tomorrow night when they take on Syracuse. Syracuse basketball tonight, hosting Virginia Tech. It's the final home game of the regular season for the Orange. Sports brought to you by GetMyPerks.com, where you can save off today on Lasertron. Gene Battaglia and the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Get ready for the Combine. Tamperfest.
We'll talk about it. We'll make that decision when we need to. Right now, we're just one step at a time.
But number 72, Michael Clements. Bitch boy. I hate them.
Daquan Jones has to be on this roster next year.
Leonard Floyd, that's my first guy, and my second guy is A.J. Epinesa.
With the 28th pick,
There's going to be a quality player available at wide receiver for them at 28.
Mike Danger.
Do you trust Sean McDermott?
You have to, I suppose.
Do you, though? Do you trust Brandon Beane? Do you trust Terry Pagula? I don't 100% trust what's going on with that organization.
Gene Battaglia.
You're not going to see me flying high. I'm just telling you, Mike. I'm a new man. I'm a new fan.
As Buffalo tries again to beat the Florida Panthers tonight.
the Florida Panthers.
The absolute worst call of the season. No call. And enough's enough.
The refs have already admitted their mistake on the no call last night.
Shohei Ohtani, he has his debut today for the Dodgers.
It's showtime.
Honestly, sign me up for 50 bombs.
Whoa, 50?
Yep.
95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
It is happy hour, and we welcome you back into the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia, glad that you've chosen us to be your sports information and entertainment source for a few minutes on the ride home, listening at 95.7 FM and AM 950. We appreciate you checking us out on the free-to-download Odyssey app, where we sound our best, and the video stream up as well. Like, subscribe, follow along on YouTube, our channel, The Fan Rochester, also streaming on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. I'm Danger, that's Battaglia.
Did does Brandon Beane get fined for what he said today?
He said the S word.
He said the S word today.
The real S word.
Yeah, that might have been, yeah. Like, we can't play this bite for you, but look, some of this today, some of the questioning for Brandon Beane, he did the local, on One Bills Live, which they were great with him. He also did the podium, and anybody can ask a question at the podium. I'm like, wait a second, why is Mike Reese asking a question? Wait a second, why is Marcel? And then you realize, okay, they're taking Brandon Beane in a direction that has really nothing to do with the Buffalo Bills here in the year 2024. We're revisiting the whole Josh Allen experience, and that's the question for a lot of these teams. Do they want to trade up? Well, let's talk to the general manager it worked out for. This was his quote, and again, we can't play it for you, on his decision to trade up for Josh Allen. If he doesn't work out, I'm not going to be here anyway. And if he does work out, nobody's going to give an
S. Right. It is a tough question for a lot of teams this offseason. I imagine like the Giants are probably wondering, if you're Joe Shane, how long is your leash? You did what I think you had to do with Daniel Jones last year. He doesn't have any more guaranteed money after this year, so you might have to endure another year of Daniel Jones.
Ooh, wait a second, though. Are you coming around to my train of thought that the Giants will go up to 6 and higher? And
no.
Then, yes, you will.
Daniel Jones is their quarterback this year.
No, they will draft a quarterback. What about this? Hey, let's. Why these Justin Jefferson rumors out there? Where are they coming from? Well, could the Vikings actually, from the standpoint of if they need a move up here,
it could come from the Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody immediately wants to say, they're too cheap. They don't want to pay the guy. They don't want to make him the highest paid wide receiver in the league. You have to kind of consider where these are coming from and what benefits the person that's putting it out there. if you're a team that wants a wide receiver in the draft? Do you benefit by having another team trade for a wide receiver? That way, the wide receiver that you really like in the draft, it might be available to you if you're there.
Oh, wait a second. Then, so you could force a Marvin Harrison down to, say, 4 or 5 if Justin Jefferson were going to float these rumors out.
I would also say that I think it was Catalana that brought this up yesterday, like the history of teams selecting wide receiver in the top 10 isn't a great one.
No, probably number 1 on the list, Larry Fitzgerald. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. He's great. But for every Larry Fitzgerald, there's like 5 Justin Blackmons.
Yeah, right. And I guess you could say the same thing about quarterback, right?
Sure.
I mean, quarterback feels like the ultimate crapshoot. When you have that number 1 overall pick, do you go quarterback when you feel like this is a sure thing? When you then realize, no, not a sure thing. I mean, there's a long history of first overall picks at quarterback that have flamed out, that haven't worked out for the team that selected them. And there's a decent history of quarterbacks that have been selected. And you don't have to look much further than the Buffalo Bills. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I know that might irk some of the local media covering the team, that Brandon Beane was being asked questions that we've covered. I mean, this is scorched earth. We've been talking to Brandon Beane for years about the process that went into selecting Josh Allen, the strategy that they had in developing, getting those picks, and then knowing here's how we're going to move up the draft.
Well, you think about it, like for anybody that is at the bottom of the draft this year, the Bills were kind of in that same spot. You forget, like they forfeited they traded away the number 10 overall pick, but that gave them the collateral the following year, even though they made the postseason to kind of move on up, and it was moving up the chain. And you forget, like, okay, what did that pick that Tampa Bay got, and what did that pick become? I think it was Vita Vea, but it doesn't even matter at this point. Josh Allen worked out.
Yeah, and you got your guy. And he's right. If you didn't get it right, you wouldn't be here. And if you got it right, then nobody's going to care what you had to do to get it right. You got it right. And it sounds like he got it right.
Was that live on the NFL Network when he said the S word?
I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure they have somebody with an itchy trigger finger there working the delay button on network TV, just like we do here in the sports bar. Yeah, Brandon Beane dropping the S word, and I'm not talking about the Sabres.
We got to ask him that question. Like, did your mother speak to you for swearing in front of a microphone, Brandon?
Or is that part of the optics of all of this? Because that's what we are in right now, right? We call it the season of lying, but everything is about optics. Everything is about it's sleight of hand, really. Let's look at the Trey White situation. No, let's look at the corner situation for the Buffalo Bills right now. You've got a couple of things in play. You've got Trey White, who is returning from an Achilles injury.
All right, so there's and he's got this big old fat number, which, okay, contract is an issue.
You've got Kyer Elam, who many want to label a bust because he was a first-round draft pick who couldn't get on the field last year, with now a new positional head coach, or a new positional coach, I should say, willing to work with him and get him back on the field. Simultaneously, Steve Tasker on One Bills Live basically saying he believes Elam could be the week 1 starter for the Buffalo Bills.
He would have to show me a lot for this reason. When healthy, and again, that's also part of the conversation, Christian Benford is the number 1 corner on this team. He was great this year. And Rasul Douglas, when we talk about, well, can you really get the deadline anyways? He was as big a factor as anybody back there, a guy who can take away the ball, perfect for the zone defense. And also, when we're talking about who might restructure or extend or whatever, he's got a lot of base this year, which means convert some of that base, extend him a little bit. That would be one candidate I could see where the Buffalo Bills may want beyond this season.
Are you saying everything you're saying? I guess my question is, are things being put out there? And
the Kyer Elam stuff, yes.
We talked about this yesterday, right? Peter King does his sign-off, and he's basically comparing the way NFL media works these days to, what did you call it, the Russian newspaper?
Pravda.
That the NFL and every team in the NFL has its own kind of media agency, and they're only going to put out what they want to put out, and you're only going to consume. You can consume what you choose to consume, but the stuff that the team is going to put out, for lack of a better phrase, let me just call it what it is. Let me just say it's propaganda, and it's what it's going to be all glowing, all positive, in a way that benefits the team first more than anything. So, knowing One Bills Live is a production of the Buffalo Bills, knowing that you've got Steve Tasker, who's somebody we all know and respect and admire, saying what he's saying about Kaiir. Do you believe Tasker when he says Kaiir Elam is on the field for the Bills week 1 as a starter, or is this a stance to increase the value for a player that you might be looking to move off from?
I can't answer that because something was off with Elam. It really was. Like when we're at Fisher, never got the sense that this was a player that was going, down on the depth chart. Like you could say, all right, it's Trey White and it's Benford, and who's going to be the third corner. It's not that big a story, but all of a sudden when he was inactive week 1, that was, wait a second, what's going on here? So to me, the story of Kaiir Elam feels like there's more to the story. So I don't think Tasker is one of those guys, Danger, that Brandon Beane will pull aside and be like, listen, I need you to talk up Kaiir Elam in case I want to trade him. And Tasker be like, 2 thumbs up. Tasker, no, please. He's way beyond that. But to your point,
but
though,
he could have a conversation with Tasker and say something along the lines of, Kaiir is going to have a bounce back year. You watch. We're working with him. We're going to get him what he needs. And it wouldn't shock us if he has the kind of year that we expected him to have last year, this upcoming year.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like all in. That's your only move with Kaiir Elam, meaning if some team called the Buffalo Bills last year and said, hey, can we have Kaiir Elam? What are you willing to give? A second, a third? Okay, done. It didn't happen. You know why? Because no team's willing to do that. Probably no team is willing to give up anything at this point. So what are the options? Release him or try to make it work? I would go with the latter here if I'm the Buffalo Bills in that regard.
Yeah. How are Trey White and Matt Milano doing in their recovery, in their rehab from their injuries in 2023? This is Brandon Beane earlier today on One Bills Live, giving us an update on both players that are critical to the Bills' success on defense.
Trey, we've talked about it. We'll start with him. It's just what he's meant to this organization and everything he's done. And to have the injury in 21, we all saw him work so hard to come back. Probably wasn't looking like the Trey White that he wanted to be at the end of the 22 season, but really we're starting to see him come into form. I'm not going to say he was all the way back or not. You'd have to ask him, but you were definitely seeing a guy who was trending up, and then all of a sudden this Achilles on the other side pops, and it's just like, man, can the guy get a break? And it's just, you feel for him. But once again, he has attacked this thing. He's in there all the time. I've had breakfast with him a couple of times here since the season's ended because, these guys it's lonely. You got a locker room full of 75, 80 players, and all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 guys, rehabbing down there. But he has worked super hard. He's been a main staple here since Sean and I got here. And, he's continuous rehab. I don't have like a definitive timeline of yet when he'd be back, but he's doing well, working hard, everything you would expect from Trey White.
And then what about Matt Milano as well?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for the reminder. So Matt, same thing. He had a recent visit with one of the docs that did his surgery, and so all is going well. It's a little bit of a different injury than an ACL or an Achilles or things that happen to a lot of football players. So we're still working with him. He's working his way back, very positive. Anticipating his things to continue to ramp up. I don't know what yet he would look like in OTAs if we would even have clearance for him to fully participate. I think it's one of those things you'll see him on the side or doing stuff, and maybe there's a chance. But we're optimistic that Matt will be ready to go at the right time when the pads come on.
Okay, so like training camp, it's probably trending good for that, you think?
As we sit here today, I would say so. Okay. But we still got a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to sit here and say it's day one of training camp either. I think it's he is working hard. He's doing well. The updates so far have been positive.
Right.
And Matt, like he's a super optimistic guy. Just sleeps, eats ball all the time. It's all you almost have to force him to go enjoy himself a little bit.
A couple minutes there on Brandon Beane earlier today on One Bills Live, giving us an update on the recovery of Trey White and Matt Milano.
I think Milano kind of what you expect, but I think Tre'Davious White is the interesting one because right now, as it stands today, you have 2 options here with Tre'Davious White. Neither of them not appealing, right? You bring him back on the roster, and you hear Brandon Beane Say positive things. You hear him talking also in another cut where he's having breakfast with them and the rehab process. We talked to Matt Perino and how Tre'Davious White means so much in that locker room. Well, you bring him back, it's a $16.1 million cap hit according to Spot Track. That's not attractive. Okay, well, what if you do the thing you really don't want to do and release him? He's still costing you $10.3 against the cap. Well, that's not a great option either. But I look at his base salary, Danger. $8.6 million. And then you look at another, you've also got another roster bonus of $1 million. When is that going to get paid out? I don't know. Another option bonus of 1.5. That's nearly $10 million right there that you could maybe negotiate away. Or I'm looking at it this way. And probably Brandon Beane's looking at it this way. And probably Tre'Davious White is somewhere with his agent saying, oh my gosh, I don't want to take a pay cut. But if the Bills were to move on from Tre'Davious White, he's got to go find money elsewhere. Is anybody willing to pay 8.6? No? 7? 6? 5? Like, what is the market value for a player who's not going to be ready?
$5 million.
Mike Danger, it is very, very warm out today.
Count Bean? Is that
count
you?
Bean, yes. I count my beans, yeah.
Bean counter?
By the way, we will go down into the 20s tomorrow. Big swing in temperatures. Watch the 13 VAM news tonight. I am Count Tesco.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a feeling Trey White won't receive the idea of taking less next season in stride. I have a feeling that that's a problem. This is the deal I signed, and this is where I'm at. And if you're going to release me, it's going to cost you as well. So that doesn't feel like that's an option. That's a tricky situation for Brandon Beane to work through. But, man, you heard him just say pretty glowing things about their corner. And we I think, have realistic expectations of what Trey White at this stage is going to be. And it's not going to be much more than mentor.
Well, you say glowing things because Tre'Davious White, and this is also part of it, the dollars aside, you can appeal to emotion. You can appeal to what he's meant to this organization. Mm-hmm. You can do other things. You can give him a parking spot. You can hang a sign outside his studio. Whatever you want to do.
Name a coat rack after him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's other. You want to play to the ego. You better believe Tre'Davious White is hearing these quotes from Brandon Beane and his agent and everything else, and probably saying under his breath, no. Nobody has said he's back on the roster next year. Nobody said he's being cut next year. Tells me there's probably a negotiation going on.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that happening this week in Indianapolis. What about free agency? What can we expect from the Bills when free agency opens up here in just a couple of weeks before we get to the draft, after we get through the combine? Anybody that we're talking about bringing back? Anybody that we're talking about bringing in from the outside?
Part of that is we're still working through, like, what can we create? You know, we're not trying to also pile up a huge dead cap hit in 1 year or anything like that. So we're trying to, we're looking at various, options, whether we extend a guy, whether we alter his current contract, whether we just convert him and again, put it on the credit card and move it down. So we're looking at everything. Every guy's you saw we got Connor McGovern done, which was just a straight kind of move it down. We're working. We got kind of buckets for each.
Yeah, I can imagine
each one, and we're trying to massage it and get it down. Yes, the 255 number helped for what we need to get under, but you're right. Now, how much can you get under that you can go spend? And one of the things that gets lost, Chris, is you still have to save money for draft picks,
rookie pool,
and you're going to spend $3.5 million on practice squad players. Like, people don't realize, and then replacement players. Like, I think we spent over $5 million on replacement players this year.
Yeah, for injury, right?
So those things add up, and you can't go into the season with $100 in your pocket and expect to make it through a 17-game season. So all of those things. So just because you're $5 million under doesn't mean you really have $5 million to spend. We're also kind of preparing, to be able to go into the season and pay your practice squad and also replacement players.
So there's Brandon Beane setting us up for what will probably be an underwhelming free agent class for the Buffalo Bills, but maybe you get a couple of guys that you're able to get back from your outgoing class. He mentioned McGovern. They did restructure Connor McGovern. His deal is now guaranteed for 2024, which cleared $3.74 million in cap space, and I think that also goes towards Bean and McDermott recognizing the strongest unit on that team last year was the offensive line. They were consistent. They didn't miss any time. That is the best performance that the Bills have gotten out of an offensive line since Bean and McDermott have been here. And taking care of McGovern with that guaranteed contract this year saves the team a little bit of money, and it also ensures that McGovern gets his in his second year in Buffalo.
Yeah, and you can do this with basically maybe 3 more moves, the way I look at it. And it doesn't involve really releasing anybody with pain. Or an Allen restructure. I would also extend Deion Dawkins because he's got a big base salary, and that'll hurt in a few years from now. But that these are the worst, the best of the worst options, I guess you could say here, as far as Brandon Beane is concerned. And as we were mentioning, Tre'Davious White, there's also other ways you can cut some fat. Naeem Hines. He wasn't even available last year. Like, that's an easy one. $4 million.
Naeem
Hines.
Yes.
Yeah, not useful at this point. $4 million he would count against the books. I would guarantee he's going to be released.
So there you have it. Brandon Beane speaking today. Yeah, by the way, yesterday, Sean McDermott around this time was talking to the media, and all we really wanted to learn, or one of the things we wanted to learn was, hey, who's calling plays? McDermott gave his answer.
So with a defensive coordinator now on staff in name, which was something you didn't have last year, is Coach Babbage calling the plays this season?
Well, we're going to see.
Okay. Still to be determined.
It's still to be determined,
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we're going to go through that, and there's a lot of days and steps between now and then, and so we'll make that decision when we have to.
Sean McDermott on One Bills Live earlier with Chris Brown.
Which I understand. I think Matt Perino, who joined us earlier today, gave a very good explanation that if you get you're handing the keys over at some point, you would figure to Bobby Babbage. But if things aren't going well and you need a change up or something like that, like you would always reserve the right, as actually Sean McDermott did with Leslie Frazier in his tenure.
When he says we're still figuring it out, though,
Yeah.
he knows what he's going to do. He has it in his head. He's just not sharing it. And if you were to ask me, I'd say, yeah, he's probably going to do it himself and work Babbage in where he needs to work him in. You let Babbage call plays during the preseason, whatever it might be. But McDermott, like most head coaches, control freaks, don't want to give up a lot of that control, especially when you believe you have the kind of influence on a unit the way McDermott does with this Bills defense. And, for the most part, last year, successful season for the Bills defense. That's the biggest takeaways from the combine today, right there, from Beane, from McDermott. A few things happening outside of the combine. There's still a coordinator opening in the NFL. It's the Niners defensive coordinator. I guess Brandon Staley has interviewed for it. They've also interviewed Niners defensive passing game specialist Nick Sorensen to be their defensive coordinator. I'm trying to remember. Is that the Nick Sorensen that played for Kansas City, that played safety for Kansas City? There was a Sorensen for Kansas City, but I don't think it was Nick. It was a different one,
Yeah,
right?
it was a different one.
And Daniel Bullocks, who is their defensive backs coach, is also expected to interview. So we should have closure on that here, according to Kyle Shanahan, by the end of the week, on who they're going to hire to be the next defensive coordinator in San Francisco. Couple of cuts. Shaq Barrett will be released by the Buccaneers. He's got a $15 million bonus that's due next month and is coming off his time in Tampa there, where his first year with the Bucs was a one-year deal in 2019 where he put up 19 and a half sacks. And the Jets moving on from Laken Tomlinson, their guard, which saves them $8 million in cap space.
Their offensive line, that should be just the number one priority for that team, was just awful, worst in the league.
It's it, right? That has to be that you have to protect Rodgers. If you have him for a year, if you have him even if you invest in the offensive line now, you hopefully get something out of Rodgers next year if you're the Jets, but at minimum you have an offensive line that can be there and be cohesive beyond the years with Rodgers, because I don't know how much longer Rodgers is going to be able to go.
An update out of Kansas City. We're going to pay close attention to the team the Bills need to get by. And we mentioned earlier today that the Chiefs said, hey, if we get to the end of next week when we got to decide do we need to tag a player or not, we're going to use that tag on L'Jarius Sneed. So they've told Sneed's representation this would be their plan. In the hopes, of course, is reaching a long-term deal. But this is the twist in the story, Danger, that according to Jeremy Fowler, they're open to a trade as well. So, like, how does that work? Like a tag and trade, or okay, you're a property for now, and we're gonna move you at some point.
Well, they have a couple of candidates for the tag in Kansas City. Chris Jones is another guy that they could franchise tag if they wanted to keep him and ensure him being there for another season. What I like about the way the Chiefs went about this is it feels like it's very transparent, that there's no hostility between the two, that there's an explanation of how we could see this working out. And if you're open to things, we're going to be open to things.
Well, if you think the Chiefs can't do it, they did with Tyreek Hill. They moved him to Miami. That was a little bit of a surprise. And like when you hear this, like, wait a second, they would trade L'Jarius Sneed? Yeah, if there's another team that's willing to give up a first-round pick and pay Sneed the however many million he wants, that's a corner in a mid-round. That's a mid-round selection when you already have really a corner one on this team in McDuffie.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to kind of keep tabs on there. And we always mention that teams that use the franchise tag are usually viewed as dysfunctional, or it's a hostile move, I think is the way you position it, Gino. And I think a lot of teams also view it as a tool, a weapon that they can use to buy themselves a little bit of time or to get what they need to get done in a timely fashion. It kind of gives you that deadline with all the deadlines that go into the franchise tag and the window and the deadline to get a deal, long-term deal done. So it could be as simple as, hey, we're going to apply it just so we can have a little bit more time to work out the right deal for you and for the team.
Sneed, though, is he the best corner in the game? This stat I didn't even realize. He didn't allow a touchdown catch as the nearest defender in coverage all season up until the playoff game against Buffalo.
No kidding. Pretty good season for Sneed.
Yeah.
Pretty good. A round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, so we've got the Sabres tonight. You're buying back in. They're down in Florida. We've got Syracuse tonight. It's actually a pretty good sports night here. We've got a lot of NBA action to get to as well. And then, what would be your motivation for a team there that, there's a team in the NBA like the Sabres that hasn't been getting it done. We'll tell you what they're doing up in Toronto.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's me, Mike Danger, for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/Mike and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
You're listening to the Sports Update.
Day 2 of the NFL Combine. Buffalo Bills general manager Brandon Beane speaking earlier today, and yeah, he agrees speed is something he's looking for.
We're always looking for that speed, explosiveness at various positions. And again, running back, tight end, receiver, whatever it is, you want guys that can explode without the ball, but you also want rack players, guys that Josh can get the ball in their hands in space, stuff that Joe Brady can scheme up.
From last night, Connor McGovern restructuring his deal, freeing up a little bit of space. According to Spot Track, the Bills still $41 million to go to get cap compliant. Sabres, they're in action tonight. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock as they're in Florida. The Amerks are back home tomorrow night when Syracuse comes in. Syracuse basketball tonight, looking for a win. Final home game of the regular season, they take on Virginia Tech. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Sports leader 95.7 FM and streaming online at thefanrochester.com and the Odyssey app. This is The Fan Rochester.
You're back in the sports bar. Danger and Battaglia. Happy hour continues with a round of shots.
Yeah, Danger, you brought this up to me yesterday. I had to kind of look it up here because the Sabres play the Florida Panthers tonight. First on the real Florida Panthers.
It's a little bit of a shock when you're driving around Florida, as I'm prone to do this time of year every now and then, and you see the Panther crossing sign, and you think to yourself, wait a minute, what is that? Really?
It's primarily in southern Florida.
Giant cats just roaming about?
They've been known to get up as far north as Georgia, but the good news is they're no longer considered an endangered species. They were taken off the list in 2008. However, Florida Panthers are still classified as an endangered species. It's under the Federal Endangered Species Act of 1973. While they are carnivores, attacking deer and other small animals, they're going to leave you and I alone.
You sure about that?
I'm pretty sure. I couldn't find any instance.
See, I think there's a difference between cats and dogs. I think if you or I died and we're collapsed and we're on the floor and we're there for...
The dog would help you out.
The dog is looking for help. The dog is trying to figure out what's wrong. The cat will just sit there, look at you, wait, and then... as they're not getting fed, they'll start to just gnaw away at you. That's the difference between dogs and cats. Cats are, well, you know what cats are.
Meanwhile, the Florida Panther hockey team, 64% win probability tonight against the Sabres. Shocking, I know. 7 o'clock, the puck drop here on the Fan. This is the surprising thing. Did you know the Sabres have won their last 5 on the road?
I want to say it. Feels like a win. I'm never right with my predictions.
No, I was going to say, this feels like a loss.
No, I'm going to say feels like a win. If I'm pleasantly surprised that they pull this one off, feels like a win, Gino. 4 in a row. Let's go, Sabres.
Okay. We'll get your opinion here on this next game we're going to preview. Tonight's opponent for Syracuse, Virginia Tech. They're kind of a weird team. They throttled Virginia last Monday, winning by 34, but then followed that up with an uninspiring loss of Pitt. The Hokies 15-12 overall. Syracuse is at 18-10, and this game has must-win written all over for the Orange if they want any sort of postseason berth. The Orange giving a 1.5 here. Of course, you can't bet on this in New York State. 7 o'clock tip tonight on ESPNU.
Feels like a win.
No.
Feels like a win.
No.
Feels like a win.
No.
At home? Yeah, feels like a win. Going with the win.
Nope. Sleepy Dome atmosphere Tuesday night. Yeah, but let down after Bayheim Day.
I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. My gut has been wrong more often than right. So, but yeah, I'm going in with high hopes for both the Sabres and the Orange tonight. And there really are. These two teams are like they're the same team in different sports, right? Like they're just so wildly inconsistent this year.
Right. Like any night, like, oh, wait, you beat up on Toronto and you beat North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then you can lose to anybody.
That's right.
What do you do if a player on your team wants a new contract despite the fact he's got 8 years, $200 million left on said contract? Welcome to the request that is being made by now Philadelphia Phillies first baseman Bryce Harper. When Harper signed the 13-year, $330 million deal, that was back in 2019. And back then, he overruled his agent, Scott Boras. Boras wanted his client to have opt-outs in the deal. And, Harper wanted to show his commitment. Well, Now the contract is outdated. Boris is trying to use his Boris-like diplomacy to rework the deal. Phillies president Dave Dombrowski is walking the fine line, saying, quote, I don't want to just brush it off by any means.
I'm just looking at Boris's original quote.
Oh, about the hair.
Oh, man, so good. Harper, the most recognizable and marketable player in the sport, a brand unto himself. It's fashionable. It's historical. It's elite. Global, certainly. It has inspirations that deal with great shoes and great hair. I mean, you know what? When I hear that, pay him whatever he wants. Give him whatever he wants, because you're right. It's elite. It's historical. It's global, certainly. Go ahead.
They'll give him more money in Philly, won't they?
They should. I don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that they're even having this conversation, but you have to listen.
13-year contracts. Maybe don't hand them out.
Well, when you hear it's fashionable, it's historical, it's elite, it has inspirations that deal with great shoes and great hair, that's a pretty strong take on a player. You're giving him 13 years. I just think that's the biggest, like the best quote you could get from an agent ever. Scott Boras on his client, Bryce Harper.
19-year veteran Chris Paul returning live tonight for the Golden State Warriors. They play in Washington. Paul's been out since January 5th with a fractured hand. It's one of 11 games tonight in the NBA. The Knicks coming off that, we can call it controversial win, right?
Oh, man. Monty Williams has had enough.
The absolute worst call of the season. No call. And enough's enough. We've done it the right way. We've called the league. We've sent in clips. We're sick of hearing the same stuff over and over again. We had a chance to win the game, and the guy dove into Asar's legs, and there was a no call. That's an abomination.
What is that in the back? Is that Sultans of Swing? Is that Dire Straits? What is that?
That's where Dan DeLorean. Dan, you can find the clip, by the way. He just rolls. That's whatever the Writer Than You little soundtrack.
Oh, that's from Writer Than You on CBS Sports
so
Radio.
Just kind of
appreciate that. That is Monty Williams, and he's not wrong, by the way. DiVincenzo basically tackled a guy at the end of that game, and there was no call. And the Knicks gave up some pretty decent sized leads. Detroit, that's got to be frustrating if you're Monty Williams and you're trying to get something out of a young team.
He's got to stand up for him.
That's right. That's
going to cost him some money, certainly. The Knicks tonight hosting New Orleans, doubleheader on TNT. Boston hosting Philly. Boston's running away with the East right now. That is followed by Houston at Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Finally, the Sabres, well, as we mentioned, put together this 3-game winning streak. There's one team in the NBA that finally just hit that mark, too. It would be the Toronto Raptors. To give his team extra motivation to get their third straight win, head coach Darko I have trouble with his name, Rajakovic, promised them something. If they won, he would take his team out for pizza. Scotty Barnes had 21, Grady Dick with 18 in the win over Indiana. Now, to be clear, the coach said it was dinner, but his team was so humble, they want pizza. Little pizza party for the Raptors.
Hey, I'm good with that. That's fine.
But that's like the Little League coach that takes the kids out for ice cream after that.
That's fine. That's good. Pizza. I mean, they're humble. They remember their roots. They know where they came from. They're going to get pizza. What are you getting in Toronto? What kind of pizza? What do they have there? Boston Pizza, I want to say, is one of the franchises. Do you go with... I think Little Caesars is still it's called Pizza. I'm sorry. In north of the border, it's Pizza.
If you are in your yummy phase, you go to the Spaghetti Warehouse. They still have that up in Toronto.
Oh.
Where they had it here. This is probably before your time, Mike Danger.
Well, the Spaghetti Warehouse I know was on Central Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, and it became a nightclub.
Right. So the Spaghetti Warehouse, I went up to Toronto. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks like the place in Rochester.
So it's a franchise. I didn't realize it was a franchise.
Yeah, it was. So
what do they? I mean, I assume spaghetti, but what else?
Spaghetti, and then everybody their calling card. Everybody, doesn't matter what you order, you get the free ice cream at the end.
Oh, yeah, that business model maybe doesn't work out. Where you're just handing out free stuff that you could charge people for.
Well, I'm sure you kind of built in other places. I would.
That's yeah.
Okay. Oh, also too, and I'm only going to bring this up because I know you love this guy's name. Taylor Gooch is calling into question the Masters tournament.
Gooch!
Taylor Gooch was the Live Golf individual champion in 2023, but because he isn't earning the ranking points, he's not invited to Augusta National. And so Gooch had this quote, if Rory McIlroy goes out and completes his career Grand Slam without some of the best players in the world, they're just going to be with an asterisk.
Okay. Wow, those are fighting words, Gooch. Whew. Do you think Rory cares if he wins the Masters? He does not care who the field consists of.
Right. And there's going to be how many other Live golfers, including John Rahm in there, and Brooks Koepka.
Quickly, speaking of good names, I wanted to tease this for tomorrow. We'll tell you who's coming up tomorrow afternoon here next in the Sports Bar. You know, Wednesdays mean that PJ Glasser, the host of BetQL Send It In, stops by with some winners every Wednesday at 3:25. PJ is unapologetically Baltimore, and we realized it when talking to him about U.S. Women's World Cup last summer when he dropped us a Megan Rapinoe, and the Baltimore accent came out, and we're like, oh, and if you pay close attention to, you know, some of the stuff that you see on ESPN, you know that Scott Van Pelt, for years, also a Baltimore guy, has mentioned a handful of players when talking to Timmy Kirkjian, and Kirkjian just loses his mind. He thinks that the Baltimore accent is the funniest thing ever, and I am in Tim Kirkjian's camp. It cracks me up to hear somebody from Baltimore try to say some of the names that usually a name that ends in O is perfect.
It happened by accident the one day where he's like, well, yes, and you really like this team with Megan Rapinoe. Oh my gosh, who is that name?
And so we love PJ, and we know that bracket madness is about to happen. So we've created the Sports Bar Baltimore accent bracket. We'll do 4 brackets, four regions, I should say. 8 names per region. And by the time we get to, you know, week by week, we'll kind of go through it with PJ and let him decide who the greatest, the best Baltimore accent name. He will be the one that decides who wins the bracket.
Does PJ know this is coming?
I gave PJ, well, we talked about it last week with PJ. We was like, look, March Madness is coming up. We're going to be filling out our brackets, and you know that PJ is going to be all about this. And I don't remember how it came up, but we just said we should do a bracket of names, a bracket of all-timers for PJ to rattle off. I'll give you a little preview here. I've got 8 seeds in tomorrow's Major League Baseball bracket with spring training getting underway. And yes, Gino, Pete Alonso is a 7 seed.
Oh, just a 7 seed?
Oh, there's some heavy hitters.
Right.
There's another player in here. I won't spoil it. Tomorrow I'll tell you who the 1 seed is. It's a player that I know is near and dear to your heart because he spent some time with your Mets. He is an all-timer.
I know who it is.
We'll ask about Manny Machado, who's a 6 in the bracket.
What about that new guy for the Yankees? I've been hearing he hit the scoreboard the other day.
Juan Soto,
yes,
is a 4 seed. So we'll unveil the rest of the Major League Baseball bracket here for Baltimore accent brackets with PJ tomorrow.
Also, too, first time on the show, but when I say her name, I'm afraid that it's going to it has the Rochester accent to it.
Oh, yeah?
We're going to have Matty Glab on the show.
Matty Glab is coming on the Sports Bar.
We're going to talk some NFL draft.
And then we're going to go to Bill Gray's and get a great plate with Matty Glab.
She's out at the draft combine.
That'll be fun. That's tomorrow. First, last call is on the way next. 866-4326-585. 866-4FAN.
You're listening to the Join us, 585-866-4FAN, 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
You're back in the Sports Bars, Danger and Battaglia. Closing time, last call, 866-4326. Our phone number is 585-866-4FAN. We also appreciate you engaging with us throughout the afternoon on Elon's Twitter. That's X, at The Fan Rochester. Appreciate you liking and subscribing to The Fan Rochester on YouTube, our YouTube channel, our stream up at Twitch as well, at The Fan Rochester. Tonight, you mentioned it earlier in shots, Gino, sneaky good sports night for our local teams with Syracuse at home against Virginia Tech. And the Sabres looking to make it 4 in a row down south, taking on the Panthers tonight.
I look at, like, if one of these two teams pisses you off, then switch to the other one, basically. Right. That's the way.
If it doesn't go well for one team, the other team might be faring better. If it goes badly for both teams, we'll be angry tomorrow starting at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and you've got the Celtics and the Knicks on TV tonight, too. So
Truth. And the Celtics, the Knicks, rather, last night getting away with one. I mean, like, it was a football game at the end of that. But they get the win. They don't have to apologize for that. And they look to continue. Jalen Brunson's just carrying this team. He's fun to watch. You know what he is? He's Kyler Murray in the NBA. He's the NBA's Kyler Murray, but I think a better leader than Kyler Murray.
Oh my gosh, like personality-wise, couldn't be further from that, but from the stature, sure.
Just the stature and the way he moves and the way he operates. He's kind of like that jitterbug kind of guy that just hard to track, twitchy. Like his game, and he's been carrying the Knicks here with some injuries and dealing with those injuries. They're going to be something when Randall gets back, if Randall is fully healthy here down the stretch. We'll see. So you have Sabres hockey tonight on the Fan Rochester, 7 o'clock puck drop from Sunrise as they take on the Panthers, and of course the Orange hosting Virginia Tech. As we mentioned, PJ Glasser, the host of BetQL's Send It In, and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, joins us tomorrow at 3:25 with some winners. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. And making her inaugural visit into the sports bar at 4:25,
Maddie Glam.
One Bills Live.
She has a series on the Bills website about all the prospects here, so that's going to be the focus here, where we kind of heard from Bean and McDermott. Let's kind of focus in on who they might actually draft her.
And every day we want to have somebody there in Indianapolis that can act as our ears and eyes and paint a picture for us. Maddie will be that person for us tomorrow at 4:25 when she stops by the sports bar. If you miss Seth Appert or Matt Perino, find the sports bar wherever you pod. Just search us out at the sports bar, and that includes the free to download Odyssey app. JR Sport Brief next on the Fan Rochester.